kind of all at once as a package, and we can just kind of move it procedurally on our end. So, Katie, would you mind, there is a very, very bare minimum we have to read legally out loud, so I guess we'll have to do that. So maybe just start with the first.
Please take notice that a public hearing will be held by the Board of Trustees in the Village of New Paltz on November 14th at 7:30 p.m. regarding the adoption of a local law of the Village of New Paltz for the year 2012, which would prohibit the disposal of natural gas and or oil production waste on into the municipal sewer system.
All right, so unless there's someone here, I guess Paul or Kurt specifically, or Jeff, to specifically talk to this facet about fracking, you can just pick one if you'd like and let us know. So is there anyone here to speak to this law specifically? All right, then.
I'd like to put in the record the report that the mayor had received from Hydrogeological concerning fracking in general and some specific problems, and all of the board has had the opportunity to examine this, and I'd like to give that to the clerk to put in the record for this hearing, and I'm going to do the similar thing for the next two as well.
And so why don't we do this then, since you've mentioned Hydroquest, and Paul Rubin, the principal, is here to speak to it. Paul, maybe you want to say a few words now, and we'll take them for given for some of the other facets of the laws if you'd like to head out, but otherwise you can speak to specific aspects.
Sure.
I'm sure people understand the complexity of the issue and why we felt that it was, most importantly, that Ariana and Stuart felt that it was most effective to have 4 separate laws rather than one local law. So please bear with us if you're watching this at home on TV later. There's a legal reason why we're doing it in 4 pieces all at once rather than one big chunk. So, Paul?
If you like, I'll just talk generally.
Please, absolutely.
You want me to stand up or just sit?
Whatever you like. If you'd like to be actually, if you want to come down here, get on camera so that people can see who you are.
Put a chair on the end of the table.
Well, my name's Paul Rubin. I'm a hydrogeologist and president of an environmental consulting firm called Hydroquest. I have over 30 years experience. Since about 2009, I've been very actively working with environmental groups and law firms, specifically on hydrofracking environmental issues. And some of the litigation work that I represent a number of different law firms. One of them includes Dimmock, Pennsylvania, which is where this water is from. This is from a fellow's well. It was a family and kids. Used to be clear.
And so Eli is the person's well it came from?
Scott Ely, that's
Ely,
right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is his well. For example, it used to be clear. It's now the color of chocolate milk, as you can see. And that's not the sole problem. The problem is there's all kinds of chemicals in there that you can't tell what they are. A common pH for water, for example, is 7, 7.5. This water has a pH of over 9.5. And that's not 2 numbers. That's 7.5 to 8.5 is 1 order of magnitude.
Right. It's exponential.
Right. Yeah. So it's over 100 times what would be considered normal for that area. So that's just an indicator. There are other things in the area, 140 times the standard of aluminum. But the point is that these people are subjected to all kinds of contaminants that I'd like to see New Paltz, my hometown, not be exposed to. You know, people who have skin problems, their arsenic in their blood, bad things. So I'll just say a few things. I'll say on the record that I have submitted a number of documents, and by email today I submitted a huge 42-page report on the contaminant problems and concerns in eastern Ohio.
Which I'll email to everyone.
Right, it's a long report, but all the issues, although it's centered on Ohio and it's coming out in the news as we speak now, it's almost all the concerns relate to New Paltz. You could just change the name and look at some of the maps and just envision that this could just as well be here. And a lot of the recommendations I make in there, which are many, really should be taken into account for New Paltz. In that and in the other documentation that I provided, I would comment that I provide you with the hydrogeologic technical justification to support these bills. If you wind up in litigation, this is what you need. Okay, and I'm involved in litigation, and I know what we need to look at. I don't want to go into all the details, but I'll say a few words, if you'd like,
Please.
on the record. And that,
Obviously, there's a lot of people waiting behind you, so
that's exactly right. So I'm not going to say too much, because it's all written down, but I'll say a few things, and I'm open, you can question anything you like. The gas industry has a lot of commercials out there that you see, a lot of propaganda. One of the key things that fails to take into account, what that you hear on the commercials, is that regional groundwater flows occurs from these deep gas-rich shale horizons up to the freshwater aquifers. They don't mention that. Groundwater is not stagnant down in the bottom of the Utica Shale, which is beneath New Paltz here. It moves. It's a regional groundwater flow, and it'll move down to your nearest base level, whether it's the Walkill River or the Hudson River. It moves. Okay, it's not a stagnant entity. Okay, and it's important to know. So gas industry chemicals that are injected into these shales, here would be the Utica of greatest concern. They'll migrate. You hear of contaminant plumes in high falls, for example. The same thing will happen here throughout New Paltz. You will have contaminant plumes that move through the fractured bedrock aquifers, up in some cases up into unconsolidated aquifers, and then people will be exposed to them because the regional flow is sort of arcuate upwards to our major aquifers, where our major water supplies are, where our major population centers are. That's where it goes. So it does move. So the hydraulic fracturing and the chemicals that are involved in it pose a serious threat to the groundwater quality, not only in the drilling site then, but along the entire down gradient part of that flow system until eventually that water comes back up. How long does it take to move? There's no one answer for that. In some cases, it can move in 5 minutes. If you're under huge hydraulic pressures, there's a prominent hydrogeologist, Professor Emeritus at Oneonta. He's done some calculations, Dr. Arthur N. Palmer. At 2,500 PSI, he has calculated that the pressures from that kind of hydrofracking are enough to raise contaminants up over a mile above the land surface. And normally they're using 10,000 PSI. So to give you the scope of this, it is very possible to move things, if you're right in a fracture system, within minutes. In some of these homeowner cases where we're seeing contaminants in Dimmick and on some of the Pennsylvania sites that I'm involved in, it may take years, but in other places it may take a lot of years. But it moves and it will be coming along. You
said that the Professor Oneonta has calculated that pounds per square inch of fracturing the shale at a pounds per square inch of 2,500 is enough to be a mile above the surface level. The pressure head of the fluid, right? Whether chemicals or not. What you said was the industry standard is 10,000. So that is an arithmetic or curve. So that or is the industry standard? While the professor said 2,500 is 1 mile, are we saying 10,000 psi, which is industry standard? We're looking at a 4 mile plume. Or I'm not sure if it's. But significantly higher than one. Significantly higher in the real world, not just the theoretical world. Oh yeah, yeah. In the real world, yes. The pressures are enormous. So it shows that we can get chemicals up through fracture, through faults, that kind of mechanism, through failed wells, if there are old wells around that people might have, or in some gas-rich areas, they have old gas wells that are a big threat. So
yeah, I heard a report on NPR the other day regarding abandoned oil mines all across Pennsylvania, and as they were drilling for oil, they had no. It was in the late 1800s, so there was no regulation or recording of where these oil wells were. So they drilled for oil, pulled out the oil, and then abandoned the wells as they dried up, or land ownership changed hands. So there's all these abandoned wells that no one knows about, and now they're blowing up geysers as they crack for the hydraulic fracturing. Pressure sends through, and you have these methane/water geysers coming up throughout, and there's 200,000 that they suspect are throughout the state that they don't know about.
And which state are you referring to?
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
And Pennsylvania's not alone, and you're exactly on target. This is the new report that I reference in my email, and I can give you a copy of that before I leave as well. I show a map that shows some hundreds of these things, but there are literally thousands and thousands of wells which the states don't know where they are. You know, and the new report on Ohio, just a good example as any, they have a reservoir, the one I use as a case example, called the Seneca Reservoir. It's just like these Shokan Reservoir, if you can picture that, except for it has hundreds of wells around it and old abandoned wells beneath it. They are getting ready within days, their board, like you're sitting here, to permit new gas wells that are likely to blow out. They have a lot of clay seals, clay plugs in their wells. They're going to put those high pressures on. They're going to be interconnected, just like you talked about, and they're going to blow right out through the bottom of these reservoirs. People downstream in Cambridge, Ohio, just as an example situation, there's an incredibly high, unusual incidence of different cancers. And although the studies haven't been done yet to link them to the gas field contaminants, the probability is there. And as the medical doctors and toxicologists do these evaluations, I think we will see a connection. So stay tuned and we'll see what the medical experts come up with. But all I can tell you, it is being investigated. And we don't want that here. So as a hydrogeologist, I used to work with the Attorney General's office up in Albany, Environmental Protection Bureau. One of the cases I worked on, Love Canal. Biggest hazardous waste case in U.S. history for a long period of time. Awful, you know, dioxin, all kinds of terrible waste that are moving out toward the different homeowners, several rings out. And this is now being actively remediated. And as horrible as that site is, to put things in context from a hydrogeologic perspective as I see it, and having worked on Love Canal in the trial, it's a small site. You know, it's shallow. We can put wells in, we can monitor it, we can remediate it by creating an inward hydraulic gradient to capture the contaminants. But that's not the case. If you have hundreds or thousands of these hydrofracking wells below the ground surface, and you inject chemicals in them, we don't have a river to dilute them. We have very narrow fractures, hair width wide. These contaminants from thousands of wells are, they're going to move slowly. They're not going to go away. So it's something we need to factor in. And in terms of comparing it to Love Canal, you know, it's so much worse because you can't see it. It's going to be more widespread. The plumes will be moving slowly, some places faster than others through fractures. And there's just no way to monitor it. And the bottom, at the end of the day, is no matter how much money you throw at it, it's too late. You cannot remediate it.
So Paul, there's a lot of the press and the national attention and a lot of the national nonprofits issue focused on Ohio, Pennsylvania, like the places, the whole state is basically underlain by the most easily gotten, right? Which is the Marcellus. Everyone hears about the Marcellus shale. And one of the reasons that, you know, when I was, I think I emailed Katie Meinkhofer, a colleague, and was asking, well, what's under the village, really? Because for the layperson, it's kind of difficult to understand the soil maps, sort of like to understand how deep you go. Right. And what I was struck by in your first report was that you mentioned it was done for Marbletown, and you mentioned that there is, in fact, Marcellus shale in Marbletown, but the patches, the deposits, aren't really all that economic. There's not a lot of an economic incentive to exploit them. And one of the question I have for you, because it gets to the village specifically, is that one of the big questions until I read your report was that, you know, people knew that there was such a thing as Utica shale and that was all over the place, but no one seemed to understand whether that was as big a draw for these companies as Marcellus. And your report states that there is potential, and because so maybe could you talk for a minute about the specific potential within our 2 square miles of the earth? You know, like what's under our feet, what's the risk for us in your experience, like what's the potential there? First,
New Paltz does not have the Marcellus shale here. It's only further to the west from you. But all of New Paltz.
And that includes a town, because we have town councilman Jeff Logan here as well. The towns as well.
It's widespread.
Yeah.
It goes entirely under the New Paltz area. So the Utica is there. There may be other gas-rich shales that are found. And because these are gas-rich and they are being exploited in other areas, and we are just outside of the New York City watershed. New York City has been, you know, given some sort of protection, perhaps. So it puts you in a prime location. You're beyond New York City's boundaries. You have the Utica shale. Will it turn out to be, you know, of a quality sufficient to be productive? No one really knows that answer until they drill it and test it. So, but it's here, and the odds are when the time comes, they'll be here. I don't know whether they're out with landsmen applying, trying to get lease agreements or not in New Paltz, but if they are, then that's a pretty good clue. But it would be better to enact legislation to avoid it before you get to that point, because then you don't have angry leaseholders on your hands.
And I'm sorry, I'll say it, thank you, because I'm trying to think back to Brine, you just got it. Well, isn't it called Manhattan Schist? Isn't ours called Manhattan that goes through the Schmallenberg Bridge? That's the shale? It's under the order of, did any of you take
Martinsburg shale.
Is it Martinsburg? Does that one have any value to it?
As far as I know, there's not been gas found in it. And the fact that the Utica is known for gas doesn't mean that may be the only gas-rich shale. In some areas, there's multiple shales, and some are just better producers than others. So as they test an area, then you'll learn whether it's worthwhile. One of the things I might mention, though, is if you see the commercials, for example, on the how great gas wells are, they'll show that there are multiple casings and steel pipes to protect the freshwater aquifer. And that's what it's all about. If you can protect the freshwater aquifer, then theoretically it could be safe. If you could never risk contact from the deep injected fluids from the gas companies, as well as the natural hydrocarbons which you're bringing up. Essentially, you have holes that are going through the bedrock strata, many of which have, are confining beds. They separate those lower horizons of depth that have, whether it's oil or gas, hydrocarbon and maybe radioactive materials. If you breach that and you don't adequately seal the bedrock formations from great depth to the surface, then there's a risk of contamination. So you might see on the commercials that, yes, we will put in multiple casings and cement all around them. Well, turns out, if you read through my website with many more reports, which I reference in there, and all of them I request be incorporated by reference here, one of my reports, April 9th, 2011, I think, 10, somewhere in there, I did a huge literature search throughout the gas company literature, and I learned that under the very best of conditions, you might expect cement to have a lifespan of 100 years. Very, very best. Okay, and that doesn't allow for corrosive chemicals injected in the well, saline water that corrodes it, earthquakes that crack it, and I talk about all the debonding type things, but there are many ways in which cement will fail in 100 years, probably way less. The steel, that's the other two things that are going to protect your freshwater aquifers are cement and steel. That's what they use today. That's state-of-the-art technology. And technology is not capable of long-term protection of your aquifers. You think, how long should your aquifer last? I've discussed this in some of my other paperwork. In my opinion, your aquifers have taken a million years to evolve. We can prove it. There will last another million years, if not degraded. And if you expect New Paltz and the civilization as a whole to continue for thousands of years, what you do now is it, because you can't remediate it. Once you open these pathways up, the cement will degrade. The best of modeling studies, the best studies on steel, 80 years, okay? So your very best you'll ever get would be 100 years, but you're not going to get that. A friend of mine, a consultant friend, went down and toured one of the steel-making companies in Kentucky. And he asked the guy, how long will your steel last? And it's in one of my reports here. Well, generally less than 5 years, because the chemicals are so corrosive it won't last, so we have to replace it. So there's from the company reps. And that's why we're starting to see all these problems. It's why we're seeing, we will start to see soil sticks in the ocean floor, because same things. The cement will degrade, the steel will degrade, and magically there'll be this mystery plumes of oil out there. Except here we're on the land surface. So the technology is not there to protect the aquifers in the long term. The companies will come in. If you look at the production curves, normal best wells, 4 to 7 years, outside maybe 20 years, and that well's done. Okay, and the laterals, the horizontals, the projections that go out, they will interconnect many wells and many formations, and then the risk of contaminants coming up through time are, if I had to give what kind of percent I think likelihood that would happen, it's a very simple number, 100.
Mm. Ariana and Stuart, even the leaders on this, do you have any thoughts or questions that Paul, things that we might want to get on the record from Paul's expertise?
No, I mean, like, everything that you said is exactly what we need to know, and I agree with all of it. These are the reasons why I'm moving this forward.
I'll touch on your brine spreading while we're there.
Please, yeah, whatever information you can provide.
Brine spreading is one of your laws. I've testified in front of the...
Trust me, I'm going to make the New Paltz Times watch the video, so no, it'll all be on the record.
I've testified and provided testimony to Ulster County and Dutchess County and in Pennsylvania, which I'll give you a copy of before I leave here. The idea is with the gas companies, if they can give you some of their waste brines, you can use it to desalt your roads. It's good for them because they can get rid of the waste. It's good for you because you don't maybe have to pay for as much salt. The trouble is, the flowback water from these wells is not just salt. I mean, certainly there's salt in there, but it's laced with hundreds of toxic chemicals. It's laced with proprietary, unknown chemicals. It's laced with chemicals that change the entire groundwater flow chemistry from unknown chemicals to who knows what. So to take these chemicals and disperse them on the land is only a time bomb. Whether or not it happens to go in during the winter or not is irrelevant, because the time will come when the spring thaws come and those chemicals will then infiltrate into the ground, run off on the surface to your streams and your waterways. It will happen. Whether it happens today or in 3 months is irrelevant, because it will happen and it will accumulate through time. One of the things I worked on at the Attorney General's office was I helped draft legislation to require these salt storage sheds for sand salt piles. And as part of that, I did a lot of research, and I found out that salt contamination is one of the greatest contaminations in all 50 states. And so we tried to draft legislation to help require these at that time, because these chemicals were getting out. And at that time, the big concern was there was a little tiny bit of cyanide mixed in as an anti-caking agent in the salt. That's nothing compared to unknown chemicals that, why would you possibly want this to go on the road? But at my house, my well's 150 feet from the road. Whenever it rains, it somehow runs down the road, my driveway, right to my well. And this will be the same for lots of people. It doesn't matter how far you are away, it's a matter of time. It'll infiltrate the ground and move toward your well. So, same is true with your wastewater treatment plants. You don't know what chemicals are in there. The systems are not capable of treating all the chemicals because you don't even know what's in there. So to take money to put these chemicals in your system that are going to then flow out into your surface waterways and your trout streams or whatnot, that makes no sense.
Have any of the communities you've worked with dealt with the wastewater from this, like in their sewage systems?
I haven't been involved in that.
Okay.
Is there some reason why the government, if even though it's proprietary, whatever they're putting in there, if it's going to perhaps affect the municipal water system, why they can't require them to have the chemicals tested to see what's in there, to see if it's toxic, and if it is, then prohibit them from using it?
Well, I suppose if you tested for all the chemicals every time, then you could find out what there was. But that would be very expensive, because there are hundreds of potential chemicals, some of which are still classified as proprietary, so you could never test for all of them. As long as there's that word proprietary involved, you will never know what you're getting. And it's like it's like the pharmaceutical waste. It's showing up in the streams in our biota, and then in the populations taking it in, showing up in new studies. The same thing's likely to happen with this waste. Whatever you can't treat will be sort of like the pharmaceutical waste, in that it'll be in our streams, in our biota, our ecosystems.
I guess I don't understand why. I can understand if something's proprietary and it's on my property and it'll never affect anyone else in the world, then fine. But if it's proprietary and it's going to affect the water system of a widespread area in the municipality, why can't they require them to tell them what's in there, because they're affecting, or either do that or say, no, you can't do it. I mean,
well, if you could, and obviously, if you could document every last chemical that was in the water and its concentration, and knew that you had this system capable of handling it, then you would be fine. But we're not at that point.
So the government can't come in and make spontaneous
They
inspections
can,
of
they
this?
choose not to.
There's a lack of oversight.
Hmm.
And lack of regulation. I mean, you're right. I think that it should be
Yeah, I
wrong
think-
to
I think we could
allow
say
a company to have a proprietary chemical, not just a list of what's in there, but the chemical itself being proprietary, something invented and poisonous. But which is something we should all run for Congress.
I was gonna say, the correct answer is we need to be
Well,
running more things.
The other end of this is the most important end. I mean, why do we care about every one of these things we're talking about here? The bottom line is simple: health impacts.
Yeah.
That's where it all goes. You know, I've been as a part of a special panel that's met with some of the high up people in New York State to help persuade them of some of the medical and hydrogeologic risks, and I had opportunity to meet some of the toxicologists and medical doctors who are working in Washington County, Pennsylvania, at a special clinic where people are coming in with adverse medical impacts, like the ones that some of the litigation I'm involved in, that are quite likely linked to the gas industry, and it's scary stuff. I mean, some of these people, and I won't mention the name of the case I'm involved in, the chemicals are so bad that toxicologists said to them, and this is a woman and her kids, beautiful house, I went there. It's empty. They said the only thing you can do to have your children safe is to move out. Okay, this is a more rural area than here, than New Paltz, really, maybe out further. And that's what's happening. People are being impacted. They can't drink their water. They don't have the proof to show the gas companies are responsible. They're moving out. That's having medical symptoms that will impact them and their kids for who knows how long. The companies are forcing non-disclosure agreements, so even the doctors sometimes don't know what's going on in some cases. This is not something you want to be involved in.
You said you spoke to state officials regarding this. Two questions. How did you feel that they received this information? And also, were there medical or scientists from the other side at the same meeting saying, "Oh no, this isn't"?
No, it was just a select group of scientists presenting new information, new as in post generic environmental impact statement type work, and some of the concerns, so that hopefully some of the new work that the state will be doing with the medical evaluation, which is ongoing now, we're hoping that they will take that into account. So, we left the meeting, with a good feeling that they were listening to us. In fact, I think you could say that maybe they were, maybe we're not alone, other people have said that meeting as well, so we don't take all the credit. But this group that I was part of, when we went in, one of the things we were concerned was that they would allow the first hydrofracking in New York State soon, and we aren't there. So, it's not this one group I was with alone, but other groups and the public and environmental groups have all been coming together, and it's these are clues that the state is listening.
What about the public? I mean, I hear polls on the radio of, New York State residents, especially the downstaters, seem to be more in favor of this, and the upstaters are now less and less feeling like this is a good idea. I mean, I know this is probably a broad question, but what do we do? How do we convince people that this is a serious long-term issue? I mean, what is it?
Well, every day, new studies are coming out. Now, the longer things are delayed, the better, because we're learning more. Tom Myers has put out a paper showing and modeling how these things are moving, how long the pressure heads stay high. Another example. Toxicologists are finding medical impacts. There are groups getting together who are studying it. This Ohio site I'm involved with is a scary situation. You look at figure 1C in this report I gave you. This is a watershed, could be here. Hundreds of wells, potential horizontals right under the reservoirs. The potential for contamination and medical impacts are phenomenally huge, that anyone would conceive of possibly approving more wells and connecting past wells with old abandoned wells nearby with weak placed plugs that are likely to be blown out when the hydrofracking is inconceivable and irresponsible.
Will you make sure to send that to us?
I'm forwarding it to you right now, actually.
I thought you were.
Can
Yes, you'll get one too, Katie. Anyone who wants one can have one. So.
you said you're working with, I guess, attorneys and on court cases.
Yes.
Have any of these cases that you're involved in been ruled upon? And what were the results? And also, how do you feel about the strength of our laws? Are these enough to protect us, at least? I don't know if you've reviewed them closely or not.
A couple comments. In one of the cases I've been involved in, a number of settlements have occurred. Some are outstanding. The others are actively involved in litigation. And I haven't had a chance to fully review your laws, which I just got a copy of tonight.
Okay.
Any other questions for Paul?
Anyway,
Thank you, Dr.
I
Rubin.
encourage you to pass all your laws.
Thank you.
This is my
hometown too.
I was.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Rubin, for coming out.
Thanks.
It was fantastic. Any other comments about proposed local law? Would you like to close the public hearing, keep it open for another meeting? What would you like?
I would like to keep it open.
Keep it open?
Yeah, so that we can have additional comments be put on the record, because I know that there were people who would have really liked to be here tonight that couldn't be.
Okay.
And I said that they should send their comments in, and I know even if we close it, they have 10 days.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it
I
open.
figured
What do you think? Keep
we
it
should
until our
keep it
next
open
meeting, and then
until-
we can make the decision again then.
Well, I think we could keep it open until we have all our reviews from the county.
Right, they're still pending, coming
That's
from the
pending.
county plan.
Although, I mean, Joe did say that if we really wanted to, we could pass to the two tonight that don't require.
Zoning.
Is
yeah,
that what you prefer?
but
Kind of follow you guys' lead on this.
I mean, I'm okay to wait till the 28th.
You want
Yeah,
to do them all at once, all at the same time?
That's what I would prefer. I'd rather, see if there are comments from
Yeah,
the
that's
county,
right.
what are
Exactly,
they, what are
I would
they,
like to
and
give people an opportunity.
then we can react to that if we think it's important.
I would also like to give the public more of an opportunity to comment since, they're interested in it.
I just wanted to point of order that we don't have a meeting next week, so we'd have to wait for
It's
2
the
weeks.
28th.
28th.
I just wanted to make sure you had that. I didn't know
Yeah,
if that
no,
would
thank
affect.
you.
Do we know what the date is that the 30 days will be up for the county?
Joe sent an email.
I emailed it on the 26th.
So,
So that would be, they should have seen it at the they should have talked about it at the November 7th meeting. And
In
No, it
Joe's
has to do
email,
when you
it said
send
that
it,
November
30
7th
days.
meeting was canceled. Yeah.
Yes.
That was the night of the storm, but they did hold it later. But we can figure out this bit.
okay.
Well, Katie, just email us the schedule when you have the notes in front of you.
absolutely.
And I can't remember whether you have to make a motion or not, so I'm just gonna, I guess, move to
Can I
keep
have
it.
it for you?
Yes, please, Paul.
Let me just officially submit, besides the email we sent you, which is, here's a copy of that email. Put that,
Thank you.
have that in record. And here's a document I put together which addresses some of the brine spreading concerns.
Beautiful.
They're for another area, but they apply equally for here, and some synopsis.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Katie, would you mind
Yes,
holding on to
absolutely.
those for the record? And
Thank you.
make copies and send to the board?
Absolutely.
All right, well, then I'll move
Share
to...
with you Joe's email from today.
The hearing open.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, because there's no more comments, and it seems silly to have her read everything. I guess we have to. I'll move to keep the public hearing open. I don't think I
Second.
need a date. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So Katie, would you, I guess, read the next one, and we'll just burn through these as quick as possible?
Absolutely. Please take note that a public hearing will be held by the Board of Trustees of the Village of New Paltz on November 14th at 7:30, immediately following the first public hearing regarding the adoption of a local law of the Village of New Paltz for the year 2012, which would amend Chapter 299 of the Village Code to prohibit natural gas and/or oil exploration and extraction.
I assume no one here to speak to this law? I move to keep the public hearing open?
And I'll submit this to put in that file too, along with the copies of the papers you received for this one.
Certainly, Stuart.
We do that for all 4 of them.
Absolutely, Stuart.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, just, or I'm writing to vote on them. And again, we'll just do the same routine the next two. Katie, whenever you're ready.
I'm just bringing it right up.
I'm gonna ask Joe if we can legally have just one public hearing on all this, so we don't have to go through this ridiculousness.
Please take note that the public hearing will be held, by the Board of Trustees of the Village of New Paltz on November 14th, starting at 7:30 p.m.
Okay.
immediately following the second public hearing regarding the adoption of a local law of the Village of New Paltz for the year 2012, which prohibits brine on village roads.
Thank you. I move to keep the public hearing open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And last time, Katie?
Absolutely. Please take notice that the public hearing will be held by the Board of Trustees of the Village of New Paltz on November 14th at 7:30 p.m. immediately following the third public hearing regarding the declaring of lead agency, classifying action, and referring proposed local laws relating to oil and gas drilling.
I move to keep the hearing open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If unless you're curious about something else, you're welcome. I mean, that's all the fracking we're talking about tonight, Paul. So,
Thank you so much
have
for
some.
coming.
We do have some gripping conversation about the pool and the Waldorf school. If you want to stick around.
I guess my only question would be, I saw that there's some sort of hearing tomorrow night with the town.
Jeff, do you know anything about this? Town board
Yes.
hearing tomorrow?
Well, we passed our 2 fracking laws, which does not allow you to truck it or transport it on the roads or spread it on the roads, and the other law does
But
not
what
allow
about
you
the
to
zoning?
dump it onto. I'm not aware of us having, do we have a hearing?
Susan actually
It's
said
on,
this
it's on your
morning
webpage or something.
that,
It's on that section.
So let me just take a look.
that you hadn't had a response from the county yet.
Let's see,
So maybe you were
You can
in
take
the
that.
same
Thanks. Don't
position
forget.
where
Exactly.
on the zoning, but not.
Yes, it is, you're absolutely right. The one we did not pass is the one with the zoning, and that's for 7:15 tomorrow.
So that covers.
That's zoning out, that's doing the same thing the village is doing, which is
Banning it
making
under
it
the
illegal
zoning.
to have exploration and
Same
same thing. Because we were able to do the same thing that Jason, you said, which is we passed the one on transporting it on the roads and putting it in the sewers, because it didn't involve zoning. I don't believe we've heard back from the county yet, though.
That's what Susan said
Yeah.
this morning.
But it is scheduled for 7:15, so we may not, if you wanna call tomorrow morning and ask Carol if you wanna see if we're gonna have it. If we haven't heard from the county, we probably won't do anything.
Probably won't go then.
But we passed 2 out of 3 of the laws.
Well, that sounds like you're on the right track then.
Yes, sir,
If
yes.
you want to incorporate all this stuff by reference, that would be great.
Yep, I think it is.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that would do
Would be
it
a
for
nice
the
thing to do.
any court cases. Sure.
Yep,
You know, help protect it.
we will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul, so
Thank
much. Ariana, wait, were there a couple things for the agenda? Do we need to add anything?
There are things.
What do we have?
Well, I would love to. I mean, I was wondering why the moratorium wasn't on the agenda, but I requested it from Kurt, and I was hoping we could talk about it. I printed a copy for Stuart since I figured you had already seen it, and Brine and I both have our electronics. So I'd like to add that. I'd also like to add, because we got the DEIS statement on Friday, and I
And
sent
that
an
hearing was
email, but I
extended
thought
anyway,
that
so-
what.
The hearing was extended anyway.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and it just came
I
in. It
know.
came in late, so I figured you'd do it now. That's all.
Well, yeah, I sent an email
So-
request. That was the email that you got.
Point.
Because I feel like we should all vote on
Mhm.
that being an official statement from the village board, and with the idea that Kurt, if you were so willing, would go and actually read it at the planning board, the town planning.
I'm available November 29th for that, yep.
19th.
19th, sorry. Thank you.
Was it just those two?
Just in case you.
Was it just those two, or do you have others?
I mean, those are my two things, but I guess I was also thinking that in order to stick with our, what we said were our priorities, until we actually discuss and move on the moratorium, to wait on the upper Chestnut Gateway District.
Well, let's just fold all those together into one for Kurt, because that way we don't have to space them out. So, I mean, rather than pull something else off, can we have that conversation about whether the priority or simultaneous?
Well, I feel like they're
in
two
a-
different conversations.
All right. Well, we'll just add them all then.
I also had requested that we put village records on the agenda. There is a long discussion on that, which we could probably put off, but then I think there's important tonight to have at least a short discussion on that.
Well, and Katie's our person for that, and she's trapped with us anyway, so that's fine. Brian, did you have anything?
I would like to have a brief discussion on an email that was sent to employees regarding the consolidation committee.
Yeah, the HR report thing?
Yes.
Okay. HR, is that it? So 4 things? Alright, and I'm assuming there's no public comment. Richard, you're here for the, unless you want to say something now about the V3, oh, you can wait until we have that conversation since there's no one here. Okay. So let's get our distinguished auditors out of here first, or second, or third. You guys want to join us at the table?
Yeah.
Bring a second chair with her.
Oh,
You want to put it, another chair on the end because we got the TV up here.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm Leslie Tillotson. I was the audit manager on the audit. And with me is Ryan Leahy. He was the audit supervisor. We're here tonight to present the May 31st, 2012 audited financial statements, which I think everybody has in front of you. The financial statement consists of the independent audit opinion, and we've issued an unqualified opinion, which is the best opinion you can receive. The next is the management's discussion and analysis, which is also known as the MD&A. It summarizes all the key financial highlights of the village. This was prepared by management. The next is the district-wide financial statements, which are based on full accrual. Next are the notes to the financials, and then we have your fund level, your general fund, your community development, water, sewer, special purpose capital. Tonight we're going to focus on the general fund, and I'm going to switch it over to Ryan, who's going to just discuss some financial highlights.
If you guys want to just kind of follow along, maybe if you flip to page 49, I feel this is probably one of the most important pages in the financials. I know there's a lot of information in here. And what we're looking at here is the general fund. It's the operating fund of the village, and this is a comparative statement, but we're actually going to focus on the 2012. And this statement's going to have your budgets, your actual, and then the final column is going to compare your final budget to your actual column. So I'm going to start with the first column to the far left is your original budget. If you look down to the first underline, you're going to see that the village adopted a budget to generate $2.5 million in revenues in 2012. They also adopted a budget to expend $2.6 million in 2012, and the village anticipated on the last line to use $55,000 of their fund balance to balance the budget. In the final budget column, there's not much change from the original budget except for some minor budget amendments that were passed during the year. If you look at the revenues, you can see that the revenues went from $2.58 million to $2.59, a $6 million increase. The expenditures went from $2.61 million to $2.62, a $10 million increase for unanticipated revenues that the village received and unanticipated expenditures that the village incurred in 2012. Now the third column over is your actual column. So if you look at for revenues, of the $2.5 million that was anticipated, the village actually received $2.5 million. So ultimately, you came pretty close to budget in the 2012 year. The final column is the variance column. You can see that that you were under budget $49,000 in 2012 from what you anticipated in revenues. Ultimately, if you see on the far right, there's a $33 million number. That's your departmental income. Oh, 33,000, sorry. Did I say million?
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of budget reviews and I've been
here.
dealing in millions.
At least it was on the revenue side. Anyway.
Sorry about that. The departmental income was about 33,000 under, and that was mainly generated from the fire service contract, which was signed a little under than what was the previous year. If we go down to the expenditures, The village incurred $2.3 million of expenditures compared to the $2.6 million which was budgeted. So the village came about approximately $250,000 under budget for expenditures, which is pretty good. If we go through some of the variance columns, the first column, general governmental support, the village came under $90,000 from what was anticipated, and that mainly was constituted from a contingency that was budgeted in the village. It's typically always budgeted, and it wasn't needed in 2012. Also, there was a public safety variance that came under a little as well. It generally has been coming under in past years, and actually the budget itself for fire safety and such has actually been decreased a lot from last year. So a lot of that savings actually was cut out in the 2012 budget. So ultimately, if we follow down the third column, you're going to see a net change in fund balance of $143,000. So ultimately, when the budget was passed, it was anticipated to use $55,000 of your fund balance, and after after everything was incurred, the village actually generated a profit of $140,000, which increased your fund balance to approximately $1.1 million. Just briefly, the $1.1 million, if you flip to the page right before that, the village implemented GASB 54, which was required to be implemented by villages in the 2012 year. And some of these fund balance at the very bottom, the fund balance categories have changed. Then they've now been placed into basically different buckets. There's a restricted category, which contains all of the different restrictions that the village has. There's an assigned category, which categorizes all of the designations that the board designate for certain purposes, mainly encumbrance, or well, not encumbrances, but designations of fund balances in the subsequent year's budget. And then finally, the unassigned fund balance is what fund balance is left to use for future years. And the unassigned fund balance is approximately 30% of the subsequent year's budget, which is a pretty healthy sized fund balance.
And comparable to last year. Last year you're pretty much at like 27%, so you're still in the good. And they usually say standards, villages don't necessarily have a minimum or maximum they should have, but they say between 20 and 30% is a healthy fund balance, so the village does have a healthy fund balance at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Skip the management letter.
Yes, do you have any questions on the financial statements?
No, it's pretty clear.
Okay. We also issued a management letter. I went through detail with management. I'm not going to go through every comment. I think management did respond to each comment. I think she submitted that to the board for.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to highlight some summary of communications that were required to inform the board. As I mentioned before, an unqualified opinion on the financial statements were issued. We found no material errors, no fraud or illegal acts were identified. We found no instances or suspicions or allegations of any fraud. Regarding the internal controls, we found no material weaknesses. We had no disagreements with management. We had no unresolved difficulties encountered in performing our audit. We are independent in all respects. And we found no irregularities or illegal acts to report. So,
Well, that's good.
it's a very good audit.
Well, yeah, thank you.
That is our presentation.
Yeah, do you guys
Do you
have
have
any
any
questions on the
questions?
management or how the audit works or other parts that they didn't cover? Brian, please.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up addendum A.
What page is that on? Oh, no,
it's
in the letter?
it's a separate,
Management
separate letter. And just kind of going through, there's a few recommendations here. One of which I think is the software.
Which one is that?
It's financial software. It's the next page over.
So the page 5, okay.
Our software has been out of. It's not New York State software. Is that my understanding?
Yeah.
It's been that way for, I mean, as long as I've been on the board, which is 3 years. I know we've been encouraged to change it, but at the same time, we've invested a decent amount of money in it. How big of a problem is this for us? It's not particularly. It's just something that we need to take care of down the road, or.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be done right away. I know it is expensive to I know the software you guys purchased was expensive, and I know converting it is a huge process to do.
Right.
I mean, it's reasonable for the size of the village, the software is fine. Our biggest concern was, I guess, really recording like encumbrances, all your purchase orders,
Right.
which to my knowledge that this software isn't capable of doing. And I know a lot of manual journal entries have to be done to this software,
Mm-hmm.
where if you get a New York State compliance software, that a lot of it's automatic.
Okay.
So it does, like closing your books can be automatic. I think now she has to go in and manually like do all these journal entries that
Okay.
have to be done.
Yeah.
And that actually
That's another.
comment is, well, the encumbrances and even the capital assets.
Right.
Right now that's currently done manually in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a different software, I know they have modules that it would generate everything automatically.
Okay.
So it would cut down a lot of duplication of work.
And I guess the note on encumbrances would also be, like
That's
you
part
said,
of the
that would be
software,
part
yeah.
of it. Is there anything here that the village can act on immediately, or really should pay careful special attention to? You think?
No, I mean, this year it was a really good audit. I mean, the staff was extremely helpful. Nancy is
Great.
wonderful. Yeah, she's really good. She has good support staff now, so it was a good audit this year.
Are there any particular vendors, software packages that you've seen work particularly well? I understand that there can be differences in you know, a village our size versus a village of Hempstead with 65,000.
Right.
You know, state compliant. There's I would assume more options. So, was there one particular software suite or company or even a few that you could at least look into, or even a site that lists them? That
Yeah, I mean, the two that I'm most familiar with are KVS and Unis. A lot of
No,
most
we
of
used
my
to use
villages.
KVS actually.
Yeah,
Unis, UNIS.
MUNIS.
When you were saying, speaking to Brine and saying that to change our system would be expensive, could you quantify that?
I mean, I don't know what.
I mean, are we talking $10,000, $100,000? What are we talking?
I don't know the price. I mean, I've never thought
Give or
about the
take.
price.
Well, we're gonna get one. Nancy in her
I know she's been
response says that
working-
she's looking into pricing out a couple of other options.
She's
so.
been in contact, I know, with KVS. She hasn't shared the cost with me. I just heard it could be a little expensive. But.
We changed ours a few years ago still, and it's about 50 for the software, but then we ran into hardware issues. So before you know it, you're buying new hardware.
Yeah.
Ryan, I think you've upgraded a lot of your hardware
Yeah.
here, so you might be in better shape than we were in.
We're probably ready for, you know.
And maybe, Brian, you want to go out and
upgrades,
look at
but-
it with Patty to look at our software, or whoever wants to do it. Maybe you want to go out and look to see, because ours is only like 2 years old.
Yeah.
Do you know when
Didn't
we
help us with our
bought?
audit though.
I mean, I truly, I wouldn't know where to begin on, you know, municipal financial software or what, yeah. I mean, I would assume that Nancy might be a good person.
Maybe Nancy
we
can
can
go out
recommend
and
that to her.
visit Patty and take a look at ours.
Yeah.
But it's expensive.
Yeah.
Do you know when we bought this last software? The
Oh.
stuff that's not
I think it was.
New York State.
I think it was a few years before I was here, and I
I think it was
believe.
my last year now.
Yeah, I think
And
it
we
was.
had to pay. We ended up having to pay like. I totally may be pulling this out of nowhere, but I'm thinking like paid like $5,000 because after we bought it, we realized it doesn't connect with something we needed it to. So they had to go. That's what they're talking about. They have to recode certain because every state is different. Like the state standards are different. So
Right.
you know,
so
it's like.
I mean, I think
it's
it
probably
would
due
really
anyway,
behoove
yeah.
us to look into the cost of this. I mean, even if it's if it's that many years old, it would
Right.
be makes sense.
Yeah, I think like you know, and speaking with Nancy about this several times before, she had said basically she just wanted to get her money's worth. It wasn't a
Got
huge
it.
thing that she couldn't cover. Her audits have been, you know, great.
I mean, clearly we're not
excellent
having-
over
yeah.
my entire time on the board. So I think that, you know, now that we've gotten our use out of it, and I assume if she's, you know, making steps to look into a new one, then, you know, she's ready and
Then
she's
yeah,
made that decision.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Any other questions, comments, praise?
Yeah. Are we going to talk at all about the special districts and stuff?
We can talk
Well,
about it.
I don't particularly want to go into the minutiae of it, but I guess my general question is, do you feel that the reserves that we have in those funds are where they should be? Are they low? Should we make adjustments in what we're doing so that the reserves are higher?
Well, I
Can
know
you comment on that?
the water fund, we did make a specific comment that the unassigned fund balance, that fund balance that's hoping to be used in future years is excessive. It's in the range of, I wanna say 80% of the total fund balance. So that's something, I mean, you could look into maybe possibly restricting for repairs. If there are repairs, designating for repairs. If you didn't wanna really tighten yourself as tight to a restriction that you have to spend it for that. But if you would wanna maybe designate it, if there are costs down the line that are needed.
I'm sure.
Are there any of the funds that are, the reserves are a lot lower than would be prudent?
Sewer actually had a big decrease in fund balance this year of 277,000. So sewer fund only has a fund balance of 145.
And what would be recommended based on the size of our system for us to have?
We raised the rates a month ago.
Yeah, so that'll help also.
Yeah. Well, no, we targeted those rates to
build up
meet that need.
Okay, so hopefully we're doing
Because water obviously is fine, sewer, and it's more critical when sewer goes bad than water, you can just get bottled water.
Sewer fund. Yeah, sewer fund just has 2 reserves right now. One for sanitary sewer treatment plant for about 18,000, and then you have some debt service reserve for 34,000. So the rest of it's 92,000 is unassigned. I mean, percentage-wise to your total fund balance, that's healthy, but your fund balance is really low in sewer fund, so I probably wouldn't recommend setting up more restrictions in the sewer. The water fund I probably would recommend, since it's unassigned, you have 80%, which is significantly high.
Well, the mayor just mentioned we are, adjusting
Okay,
our rate structure, so maybe
That might
after a
change
period of
next year.
time, hopefully that'll be good.
Yeah.
Any last questions? Anyone? No? Thank you
Okay,
both for coming
thank you very
out.
much.
Thank you so much.
I hope the fracking conversation was interesting.
It was actually.
Yeah, good. Thank you both so
Thank
much
you.
for your work as always. See you next year.
See you next year.
Can we leave the chairs here?
That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. All right, Mr. Lavala, let's get you out of here faster. So we've got 3 things now that revolve around your office. The B3 proposal on the agenda, the moratorium, and Park Point. So I guess we can have all 3 conversations, I guess, and then decide what to do with the information we get. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the
What's the best way to go
DIS could be
forward?
short if everybody's read it. I can make a motion regarding that.
That's not a bad idea. Well, unless you want to say anything about it, or
You can make a motion.
there you go. All right,
Yeah.
Then you can discussion.
I'd like to motion to
I'm sorry.
approve the, what do we have it called here? The Park Point New Paltz draft environmental impact statement, site development plan and subdivision, as the village board's official statement, to be read by Kurt Lavala, on the November 19th, at the November 19th town planning board meeting.
I'll second
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, that was
that.
easy enough.
It was very good,
Thank you.
and I was very pleased with what I read, and thank you for taking the time to do it.
I
Certainly.
actually don't have a vote from trustee Kempis.
Yeah, I know. I was adding some discussion before I jumped in, and we're very lucky to have you here.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
And that's an aye.
Thank you.
All right, so maybe Kurt, you want to say? Why don't you tell us your thinking on the moratorium in B3, and then because Ariana said a second ago, so then we can decide what we should handle first. How's that?
Certainly.
Well,
At last
I can make a
Wednesday's,
motion on that too.
Well, let Kurt say a few words first.
sure, no, I don't mean to
Say
interrupt
what
though,
the issues are.
if there's anything that had to do with the sequencing of discussion items. At last Wednesday's regularly scheduled meeting with Village Council, I had asked him just to look over the provision that draws the line over when an application is after the way we have it set in our local law, what comes in after and is thereby affected by the moratorium, and how we define. It's by completeness, which is codified, the terms of completeness, and between myself and the building inspector for building permits and then the other types of permits that require board action, we think that's most workable, and Village Council agreed. So with that, there's only one thing that I might ask the board, and that is that we did receive a letter in just about a week or week and a half ago from the executive director of Historic Huguenot Society, asking, they're seeking a change which would allow certain professional offices to be situated in the homes in the H historic district. So would the board like to consider me to add that as something? I don't anticipate changes to the historic district, and we would technically be precluded from considering the request to allow professional uses to rent space within buildings. So that's something that could be added to those select districts which will not be affected by our moratorium.
Okay.
So they're gonna be, so in doing this, they're gonna be building new.
No, I'm sorry. It's actually their existing space. I didn't provide a.
They want to put a restaurant back in that Du Bois Fort. It used to be 1 years ago, so it's like as a fundraising thing, I think.
This is what I met with them about, and what she wrote about was actually professional offices to occupy one of the now vacant spaces within one of the historic buildings. So I didn't give quite enough background, but it was a letter that I was copied on after meeting with her, and I was concerned that this might be caught in our moratorium, and it's a relatively minor change. You've heard me say that before, admittedly, but it's a change that I could accommodate along with others. For example, the B3 district. So if the board would like that to be acted upon during the period of the moratorium, then that it seemed like a reasonable request when that was my impression when I met with the executive director about that.
I'd just like to make a comment at this time that while I'm familiar with this, I'm not going to be taking part in this discussion. I'm going to recuse myself from it because I'm a member of the board of the Huguenot Historical Society and the executive committee, and so I have a conflict and I won't be discussing it.
I mean, while I love the idea of that, I would very much so like to set a public hearing on this tonight. And in fact, I'm going to make a motion right now to do so that we can continue our discussion. I would like to make a motion to set a public hearing on local law amending chapter 212 and chapter 178, adopting interim zoning law and subdivision regulations for November 28th at 7:30. Do we already have a public hearing that day?
Well, we'd have to cancel it and reschedule it when we hear back from our attorney if that needs a change.
No, it's already been seen by Joe, I thought.
Yes.
Kurt just said that he was waiting.
No, it was that he and I discussed it.
Oh, you got it then.
At last Wednesday's meeting. It was the last item for me to confer upon to make sure that I had that right in the interest of the village.
I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Okay. So Stuart can start talking again. Do either of you have an opinion on adding the historic district to the B3 and the Floyd bit as not covered by the moratorium? Since he says he doesn't foresee any real changes, and it would be an amendment to the law that we're setting a public hearing for, which is why we have to resolve it tonight if we're having a public hearing.
I like it as is.
So keep the historic district in, okay?
As we move forward and address different issues, we didn't really plan on changing anything in the historic district, is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so if, let's say we made that priority to eliminate that, we can then lift that out of the moratorium, or?
That's true.
Okay. How soon were they planning on moving forward with this? Do you
Well,
know?
actually, the Historic Society would like to move forward as soon as possible. They had come to me when they became aware that that this tenant would be interested, and I asked that they please write to the board on this, which they did and copied me. So they would hope to move forward as soon as possible. But and again, you've heard me say this before, but this is a minor modification to allow them really for, again, professional offices is what they have in mind for this particular space. And I was almost surprised that it wasn't already permitted. So
Is there a reason that you feel that if we added this, it would have to go back to the attorney? Just this
Not unless
provision?
there's something weird with how we have to phrase it. I mean, most
No.
laws are just pretty much common sense.
it actually would
So-
be added to the existing numbered list
Yeah.
of
Right.
districts that are not.
We just have to we'd have to come up with a precise worded phrase and just say that we're tacking that onto the law, and that's the law that we set the public hearing on. That wouldn't be a problem. But I haven't actually heard, neither of you seem all that particularly interested, curious, and opposed. And for me, in exempting the historic district from the moratorium.
Well, I mean, I think that we can lift it from them as soon as
When
we
it's
can.
done, yeah. And that's, I think
I don't
that's,
think that's a big.
and,
I just don't feel like this is a big deal because I don't think it's going to be that much time if we're not
Right.
planning on changing anything.
well, I'm trying to agree with you actually, because I think you're right, and Brian's right too, that, but also one other reason I think would be that I would have to, sitting here right now, it's difficult to picture what might possibly want to change. I'd feel safer if it was in the moratorium and it was just quickly lifted after you had time, you and Joe looked it over. Almost like I'd much rather lift things than not include them in the first place, just in case we need it. So there's not any support for an amendment. Is there any reason that I just want to double check that you and Joe are confident that what we're voting on now is the one we want? This is not, you weren't proposing this as a draft for discussion, this was ready to go?
It is.
Okay.
It follows the last version that was.
Okay,
that was
I just want to double check that we were not looking for feedback before a final version, so then great.
I mean, I think we did that part already.
Mhm.
We did the feedback part of it, and that's. I mean, in my opinion, this includes everything that we wanted.
Good. Well, you can talk again, so we're done with
So-
that.
So, for a point of information, what we're discussing now has nothing to do with the historic district. We're back on the original
Right.
topic,
Yep.
which
We've
is silent on this
right.
issue, right?
Exactly, we're silent on it.
Okay,
Good
now
way
I
to-
know what we're
Yeah.
talking about, all right?
Yeah.
You can tune back.
Any reason why we shouldn't set a public hearing for next week?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any other discussion?
So we've left out a few key areas around the village. Is there any particular detriment you could see? I mean, people could possibly develop in these areas currently. Is there any reason that you see that we should have not exempt them and then just lifted them out as we completed? I mean, you're working on the North Chestnut district now. Shouldn't we just include them all and then pull them out as we go, or am I not seeing this?
Well, let's put it this way. I think in all honesty, the B3 is one that I can focus on and have, but it does take considerable time. So I'd be, other than the one change allowing professional uses in the historic Huguenot district, I'd be a little hard pressed to say that I could take on and produce the results for you to lift the moratorium with regard to other districts. So I just want to see if I have, let's see, cool.
You're talking about the 1, 2, and 3 limited business core business gateway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in that case, it's also difficult to anticipate the applications that might come up. We've already had at least one come up that would have been difficult if we were in the middle of a moratorium, and that involved the relocation of an existing business to a nearby location. So I wouldn't want to be caught off guard by that. So I would say that the way we had discussed the what is currently the B3 is that could be focused on and then removed as well as the Niffen property. I wouldn't want to promise much more just in recognition of other day-to-day work.
Well, those are the things that we wanted to move on more immediately anyway. So that it makes sense that is,
It's
what
helpful.
the next step would be.
Indeed, it's helpful to keep that list confined to those items. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't actually now I'm unsure about the exemptions, because I understand like the B2, especially the downtown and core downtown, has higher turnover than anything else. So I hate to see relocations or one business goes out of business and another comes in, renovation being called up. But
Actually,
at the same time, we could set the criteria that doesn't happen. because the bigger picture, we're not particularly concerned about necessarily particular businesses at the moment, but more the big picture. You're right, because that's why you rewrite the whole zoning code. So, is there, I guess it's a question. Is it a legitimate concern to think that if we exempt the gateway and the B2, we would have a moratorium everywhere else? And we prioritize the places within the moratorium where people, for lack of a better word, kind of panic or get uncomfortable the fastest, which is a good reason to prioritize those, to be honest. But I would hate for us to make a mistake of assuming that the gateway and the B2 are fine the way they are. And without a moratorium, they're the only places not protected, which might make them more of a magnet for places that might want to come in and not deal with a moratorium. Now, are we running the risk of by exempting the two areas rather than making, for example, in a moratorium, but a higher threshold in certain areas for what's exempted? Do we run the risk of creating a situation where we have the most likely places to be developed be the one place we're not looking at? Because if they're outside the moratorium, we're not worried about who's uncomfortable and getting lifted, so we're paying attention to basically the heart of the village last, if at all. And one example I could think of is, what if, for example, the current boundaries of the gateway and B2 don't make sense, and we end up redrawing all the zoning boundaries in the village, and then now we have some of it in a moratorium, some of it not, and now it's a mixed situation. And I know, for example, the gateway, I think I've heard one of the comments I hear about that area most of all, and for those who don't know it, it's where the Otter Water Street Market, that area is that because it was either currently zoned or prior zoned commercial only, you have basically a completely desolate area, except for interior businesses. When 100 feet away, there's lots of pedestrian traffic. So things like that, the linkages within our downtown, I would imagine should be one of our highest priorities in a moratorium and a zoning code revision, rather than the only thing we're not paying attention to. Am I exaggerating too much? Am I overthinking?
I totally agree with you, except that that's not at all the point of this moratorium. The point of this moratorium is to focus on land use, and that's the area that is the most infilled already. And what we're looking at is where is buildable areas, where there's a potential to develop land that we want to keep as more open space, or that the potential to develop on it is going to increase our sewage capacity to the point that we're so what you're saying, I think, is completely valid, just because if we do, the zoning lines, for instance, if we want to change something like that. But the reason you're saying it is a completely different reason than why we're enacting this. And I mean, the development, that's the potential there. I mean, yeah, sure, I would love to make all of that like green, like zoned green building as well. But there's no reason why we can't change that without the moratorium.
True. I mean, that's the other point.
So that's how I feel more about that. It's like we can change all of that zoning also. We just don't need to prevent people from doing anything in the meantime, because there's not a lot of opportunity even to do so.
And if you were
But
going,
maybe I'm wrong.
and if you were going to make a change in the boundary or the core business, at the same time you did that, you could, adjust the moratorium legislation at the same time, so it would be compatible.
Well, one way to think about it too is when we first started talking about it, you and I started talking about it like a year ago, and brought it to the summer, yeah. It was almost one of the points of the moratorium is that it when you propose zoning changes, it can create a rush to development, so it stops that rush, so it's a calm atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So if we're changing things, some of it in a moratorium, but some of it not, we might be provoking that rush to construction under status quo. There are some, you're right, it's obviously the most built out, but there's like Toscani's, behind Toscani's, there's the bit over here, the bit over there. But because I guess I was always thinking about the moratorium as dramatic as people make it out to be, as you put a moratorium on the places you want to change, but maybe we should be, as a practice, be putting the moratorium on the places we think we might, the places we want to check on, So maybe the B2 is just check in, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that I'm just going back and forth of like including it or not in the moratorium. But
I mean, it's only 6 months.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think in the 6 month period, we can get through the two things that Kurt said, he's aware of as our priority, and in my mind, maybe one more. maybe just our zoning revisions. Like, you know, I think it's going to take time to really look at these things. And, you know, there might be some things like, you know, like I saw what you wrote about the LEED standard gold, like something like that. Maybe we're like, okay, across the board, we want to put that in. You know, so something like that we'll know sooner. But if we're really looking at things in this more encompassing way, it's going to take a while. And I think, you know, 6 months is reasonable for us to be, you know, start moving forward on things. But I think only within that 6 months will we really know how fast we can move on this. I mean, fast is what I would like to see, but it's also diligence. So.
Yeah. What do you think, Kurt?
Well, I think that I wouldn't want to add too much more to that period of 6 months in which I have, which the board has established priorities and deadlines for me. Also, just as you mentioned, we're not precluded from changing zoning in districts that are exempted. What that was of course an effort on my part to not stifle business during the period of the moratorium. So again, as a newcomer in a new position created in this village, my inclination was to exempt the B1, the B2, and the gateway in deference to business interests and the more dynamic nature of those districts, especially in the village of New Paltz, than the residential districts, where I know that we're going to be altering and looking at complicated mathematical formulas about density and how, in the construction of homes, the additions to and the conversions to. So I have to admit, I think I have my work cut out for me with those two priorities within the 6 month period. Whether or not that actually results in the lifting of the moratorium entirely, or whether there's a slight extension.
I guess I have to say I also see this as something that I feel like we are supposed to be playing a more active role in, where it's not just on Kurt, you, to write all these things for us and come up with it. I mean, part of why I wanted to do this was because I have an active interest in it, and if we didn't have you here, I would want to be doing all these things anyway, and we'd either, you know, be hiring an outside consultant or doing them ourselves. So, you know, I think, you know, that's part of why we have you here, obviously, and you have the expertise for these things, but it shouldn't all be, you know, just on your shoulders along with all the other day-to-day things and, you know, the building department stuff. I think that this is on all of us to really do our research and, you know, like, what's better, LEED or National Green Building Standards? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I actually recently read an article saying that National Green Building Standards were better, but you know, I mean, but it really is more about, like, what are we looking for? Are we looking for renewable energies? Are we looking for, you know, this kind of, like, building standard certification stuff? Like, you know, I mean, and I think that these are the kinds of things that I certainly don't know how I feel about it yet. And if I want LEED gold, or if I'm like, hell no, LEED platinum, like, you know, what do we want, you know, really?
The point is well taken, because we all are aware of these various accreditations for building standards, but the individual specifications can mean a lot to developers and property owners. We want to make our decision and not have to revisit it in the very near future.
Exactly.
And I have to admit, I know colleagues who've become accredited in terms of reviewing for LEED compliance, and the tests, the examinations for that are very specific. So we will have expertise in what they mean, even if we're not architects or civil engineers.
It used to cost them like $400.
What's
to be a LEED
AP? To become one,
you just send the entire building department to get trained to be certified as LEED professionals.
Yes, actually, and
that sounds awesome to me.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Or get some of the town involved, and we'll bring a trainer.
You know what's something important with that you thought of in relation to what you said is the idea that we do want to support people in building these things, and if certification costs a significant amount of money, which I know is part of why people don't want to be certified, is because it costs money to be certified. We can look into, you know, maybe there's quality standards that one is cheaper than the other. Like, we want to encourage people to do this and incentivize these things.
Absolutely.
So I think, like, you know, it's something for us to know.
Maybe we can include this into the revolving loan. That's something people could use the revolving loan for, like to upgrade to LEED standards or something.
Oh, the improvements, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that would be, people could apply for
The revolving loan based on that currently?
Yeah, money
Okay.
for that, yeah.
Okay.
Because since it's been cycled through like 100% already, you know, the HUD standards they don't hold true anymore, and we're able to use it for a wide variety of things. I mean, obviously job creation is part of it, but certainly, you know, green building standards or like facade renovations or something that brings people up to code is things that this money can be used for.
Yeah. That's an important component. It really is to note that it's more than just new construction entirely. Also, and the actually the cost of becoming LEED certified is the cost for getting your building certified, especially depending on the size and scope of the development project. That is unfortunately significant. I guess what they're saying is that they actually are taking a very close look by qualified people, and the cost to the developer is not insignificant. As far as the cost of certifying individuals, municipal officials, professionals, that's not so bad, although I do know from colleagues that the preparation is very significant, and the test is very significant in the understanding that you need to have. And what's lesser known is not only are there LEED certifications for construction, but I think as the mayor mentioned, LEED AP is also a certification for neighborhood planning.
That's the one I like. Yeah.
Yes, and it really
and
is.
And they have industrial, they have LEED for every kind of commercial buildings, everything.
Yes.
And actually, I did go to I don't know if they're in the Trade Association for Building Inspectors, whatever it is. They had a conference on LEED, on green building materials, and one of the problems with implementing in our area is they have there's not enough green building materials out there as the market grows for construction.
Hear that, folks at
Yeah.
home? Somebody start up a company.
Well, they also define local as within 500 miles, so local materials can be in Ohio. But the weirdest part is that is what when you said or go all the way for LEED Platinum, like as if it's a crazy idea, but it's not. Actually, it could be the only thing that makes sense. There's one economist who was there. Whatever.
It's crazy. I was just being sassy about
Well,
it.
then being sassy. But apparently, from LEED certified through bronze, silver, gold, it's just it's an increase. It makes sense for someone like us who's going to be here. We believe Village Hall is going to be here for a century, but your house, God knows. Apparently, the fastest way to recoup your cost of the green building is to go platinum. It's even better. It's more cost effective than just certified. So apparently, in terms of payback time, it's the bottom would be gold, silver, bronze, certified platinum. Platinum is the top. Then the least is the second highest in terms of your value. So it could be that we require platinum in the interest of public, health, safety, and morals or something. I don't know, but it's a longer conversation.
It is, but it's very relevant to us.
And
so maybe this should be one of the first things that I'm not saying all of you have to research this, but as a general rule that I certainly am interested in this regardless. So this could be one of the first things that
there's an idea for a baseline that goes across all the.
Maybe I'll get an intern to do this research.
So your motion on the table, Ariana, is to adopt the law as written.
Yes.
And Brian seconded. Is there any other discussion on the moratorium?
The motion is to set a
Set the
public
public
hearing.
hearing on this law, as written. No? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
So included in that was all these, the whereas portion, and included in that is that it shall be referred to the county planning board, and shall be referred to the village planning board. Just wanted to make very clear that we should send that out.
That's correct, and
Katie will send that out tomorrow.
And of course, it is a moratorium. It's not always well known, but it's a Type 2 action. The Department of Environmental Conservation has determined that by its temporary nature, it will have no significant adverse impacts on the environment. So that's determined for us, and that's one less thing that we have to contend with or do a full environmental review for, and that's the impetus to try to keep the moratorium for as short as a period as possible.
Cool.
All right. The
I mean, I
B3
think that's
district.
in our intention
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. The B3, and I know Rich is here to say a few words too, if you want to jump in at any point.
This was provided to the board last Thursday, and I recall just a brief discussion about the name. I suggested this time around the Upper Chestnut Gateway District. It of course is a gateway, maybe not the most well known of our gateways, but it's a gateway, and of course there are parts of North Chestnut Street that are zoned differently than currently B3. So I took a stab at just a name as Upper Chestnut Gateway District. Some of the things that were added include that the retail, professional / service uses, which would typically be found on the ground floor of development in this proposed district, each space would be no greater than 2,500 square feet. So we're trying, again, not identifying, rather than identifying national chains or that sort of thing, really space consumption ceilings. There also it's proposed it's proposed that development in this new district, because really what we're talking about is not only new development on a site, but new development on several sites on a district. And since this is the first time, I think that the village will have embarked upon a major transition, in this case from highway commercial to a new multi-use neighborhood. I suggest gold certification and delete. However, thinking about the discussion we just had,
That's where that discussion even stemmed from.
yeah, and that, so it may be appropriate before adoption or before going to public hearing for more discussion of that, or maybe a report of some sort from me to the village board on laying out some of the differences between the programs, and I'd enjoy doing that for the board. It would be helpful for me too.
Cool.
Can I interject? Please make a comment. I kind of refer back to what you said, as you've heard that National Green Building Standards is probably the way to go, and in not only having interest in this as a developer, but in the overall, I think, goal for the rezoning of this district, where the scalability on some projects versus others is significant.
Mm-hmm.
There's parcels here that are 1/4 of an acre, half acre, where when we get further into the zoning, we'll see that, when you get into 50% lot coverage, you're left with not a whole lot to do. And to bear the burden going through that type of gold standard certification, it's a huge undertaking for a small development. Whether or not you want to put those restrictions on people right off the bat and say, one size fits all in your initial outlay on your zoning code, is up to you. But my suggestion would be to say, meet National Green Building Standards, and as the developers see where it makes sense to have sustainability and long-term savings in their developmental projects, to adopt what's going to make the most sense for those property developers, so that they're able to achieve the overall goal of what the project that's presented and their long-term savings to themselves. By adhering to National Green Building Standards, you're going to get green building. And I guess the other, the last thing about it is that there's a lot of different agencies that can handle this. LEEDS is one of them. You've got ANSI standard certifications, you've got Energy Star certifications, and in the code is similar agencies that would be an equivalent. But I just think that starting out at the top, and the amount of energy that's provided into the gold standard certifications, I'd hate to see any limitations on development coming in based on the challenges presented at the forefront of getting anything off the ground. because one thing that I want to make clear, and everybody should kind of understand, is that mixed-use development is a very tough animal to finance. The financing aspect of 2 uses or 3 uses combined makes it challenging getting the financing to these developments. So there's challenges faced up front just to try and inherently do these types of developments. So the offering up of doing green building and the chance for potential individual properties to, as they develop down the corridor, to see what savings make sense to them in the long term, would be up for, if they want to go for bronze or silver or gold, and platinum doesn't cost any more than gold to apply for. It's just a matter of how many moving parts do you have, what kind of components go into your development, and where's going to be your savings for applying for these types of gold certifications. And I heard you guys discussing about the point to address that you guys supported that. Well, that's a 50-acre parcel, which is more than what's in the B3 district. They're building on 13 acres. They're creating their own water, their own sewer, and they're a silver standard certification.
Parkland? Well, the representatives have stated that, but they haven't, as far as I know, committed to actually obtain that certification. What they're stating is that they're building the equivalent.
Equivalent of silver?
Yeah.
Okay. I might be wrong then.
Well, it's different than obtaining a silver certification.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, they did just have one of their dormitories be certified as gold, which silver is what state buildings have to be built to. But yeah, they actually, that was how I started looking into National Green Building Standards, which is another comparable certification thing to lead, because I said, I mean, my initial reaction was, if they're building National Green Building Standards, it's got to be some kind of fluke. So, I'm looking into this, and I found out that it might actually be better. But
it's sort of like the national, building code, where everything's got to conform to certain.
No, it's not. I don't think that's what
There's
it is.
There's 2 different organizations. It's like when you look at the National Building Code Association, where you have to conform to what the header size requirements, and you're only allowed to spread out a certain amount of feet using so many inches of 2x8 or 2x10 or 2x12. It forces you to conform to the standards of this National Green Building Standard. And you can go above and beyond and go for gold, silver, or standard, but I'm just not sure, and I don't want to sway you guys either way. I just think that it might make sense to allow for site-specific, project-specific analysis of whether or not there's a savings benefit to going above and beyond for individual projects that go into this rezoning application. Because scale is one of the things that really warrants, those savings to come into play. So you're saving on your renewables, you're saving on your energy costs, you're saving on your heating and cooling, and you're if you're doing a 2.8 million square foot development, you want to save as much as you can over the first 10 years that you're going to be in business. When you don't have scale, it might not matter as much to a developer. So I don't think on a developmental standpoint that you guys might want to maybe put something out there that the developer might say, if I come in and I can only get 5,000 square feet and 3 residential units on top of it and conform to the minimum lot coverage requirement and minimum height, that this is going to warrant justification for me to do. It just might not be practical for them to obtain financing to do the project. So that's my 2 cents on the legislative intent. On what
Kurt, Kurt, what do you think? You're the only one here who has development potential besides Rich. Or I guess I know about painting and Stuart knows about financing some of it, so that's about it.
Well, we would, under the equal protection part of creating a zoning district, we would be essentially precluded from requiring this on a project by project basis. We would need to set forth the standard, if any, as far as the Green Building or any other organization, and it would need to be applied throughout the district. But I think as what the board was discussing with me moments ago was a report, a recommendation, and options on which route, if any, to embrace as far as a standard for sustainable building. So that could be undertaken as part of this. Let's put it this way: if the board would like me to look into it further, it's true. I cannot break down for you what precisely the differences are between gold, platinum, bronze, and silver, or even the other organizations that certify. So that could be part of formulating the district that replaces the B3 district.
Well, tell you what, why don't, instead of going through point by point, because Lord knows what people caught people's eye, why don't we, because I have a bunch of notes about where certain numbers came from, etc. So, but if other people want to go first, if you have specific, maybe we just do that, ask questions about this proposed change of curve, rather than have him walk us through it when we might be more efficient that way. I'll go first. If something else, well, interrupt me if something else crosses your mind. Well, some of the terms in here, and we can talk about this in the office, but some of them, I'm wondering if we might need to define what quote unquote prescribed sustainability means in the legislative intent. I'm not sure if we even define essential services under 3C. So I didn't look at cross-reference the definition, so we should double check that there's not anything we need to add.
I did not suggest a definition for prescribed sustainability.
And I'm not sure if it's necessary in the legislative intent. I don't know legally whether that's true or not.
That was intended to be what we discussed. In other words,
Oh, the concept is awesome. I just want to make sure that legally we're saying it right. That's all. And so, well, I guess because mostly it's a generic question about where some of these numbers came from, because it's difficult to picture what some of them mean, and I like there are a couple that I think I disagree with, but in general maybe you could talk about that. So I'll rattle off a couple, and you can just tell me the general gist of where you got some of these thoughts from or where it came from. On page 8.1 in our package, 1A under principal permitted uses, it says not to exceed 2,500 square feet for mixed use, and it's just a simple why. Like,
sure.
What's bigger? And I'll give you just a couple random ones, and then you can kind of. The rest of them are fine. The minimum lot size goes from 40,000 down to 11,890 at a quarter acre, which I understand is nice and round, but does that fit the legislative intent? Because the example I always use is Mexicali Blue, a profitable business on much less than a quarter acre. And if we're looking at, how fine grained would we like this to be? Because when you're looking at the map, it's easy to just make half acre blocks because it looks nice and pretty. Not that you're doing that, but it's just human nature. But when you're actually walking down a street, when you realize this strip that we're rezoning is like 3 or 4 times longer than downtown Main Street, maybe there's a place for something the size of Mexicali Blue, but this would prescribe it. And if there's a good reason why, anyway.
Sure.
The last one was just the one that also really stuck out was under 7A, maximum coverage by all impervious surfaces, 50%, and then the caveat that impervious parking facilities, like pervious pavement, I imagine, wouldn't count towards that. But so 50% again seems, when we're looking at the downtown, the lower Main Street, which, I mean, let's be honest, we're in New Paltz, which is 40 square miles. The village is only the central less than 2 square miles of that. We don't need to have everything in the village, from my point of view. We've got 38 square miles that have farms and lots of other things that take up a lot of land. This is the only place in New Paltz where you have the small, the fine grained, the human scale. So at 50% lot coverage, and you have a 4 acre lot, that means you can have 2 acres of it covered and then 2 acres of just emptiness between other buildings in the B3. So is there a reason that this isn't 90 or 100%? Because between this and the side yard and the rear yards, in my imagination, what this strip, every time I drive down that strip, what I picture is kind of Main Street from Nico to Murphy's kind of writ large, or Broadway, Saratoga. And this law would make it illegal for you to have two buildings touching, because you have mandatory side yards and setbacks. So is there a reason to not require in this one district where we're actually trying to kind of urbanize? Wouldn't it make more sense to have something like 90% lot coverage, which I think the public charrette that we did recommended, with no side yard requirement at all, and basically encourage people to maximize their lot coverage as if there's no such thing as cars and everyone walks everywhere, because that's what's going to make people want to walk places. So that, I mean, you know, is there? I understand that that's the quaint thing that everyone likes, but these are the laws that are almost always on the books. Is there a reason why we want to spread out our buildings in a tiny little village, or isn't it? This is the only place, and even within the village, like we have the Millbrook Preserve we want to preserve. We have all those quaint little side streets like Prospect and you know, Millbrook and all that. This is the only place left besides Main Street, which is built out, to actually build another Main Street, make it 2 axes crossing. So I guess what's the pros and cons of having side-by-side buildings, like basically replicate downtown but with 21st century construction, versus having something that's like that but kind of halfway between that and a little bit spaced out, you know?
I think it's an excellent question, and what we're dealing with today that wasn't around when Main Street was built was the incredibly stringent stormwater management requirements, and I'm not sure with a high water table, as I understand a lot of the parcels in the current B3 district, if the fancy, totally underground stormwater management could be undertaken. A civil engineer would have a greater insight into that.
That might be something where if we're adding 30% more ratables to the same square footage, the taxes and rates we get from having an extra building could finance something that might be unaffordable to a more spread out development, right?
As long as
we have 100 buildings on 10 square 1 mile rather than 10 on 1 mile. We could build things like stormwater. Have you seen that work in other communities?
Well, yes. I mean, as I've read about it, I haven't worked for communities that have done it. I worked for communities that planned for it and allowed for it. But the question is, does the hydrology and the soils, do they work for underground stormwater management? And what I've seen that's available in mapping for the B3 district is not that heartening for underground stormwater management. I wish that it was, and I wish we could provide an impetus for it. And again, other professionals might have more input than I am that much more specific.
So are there other reasons, or if, for example, we magically found a plan that would allow us to deal with the stormwater, could we build, if we wanted to, the density of that lower Main Street, or are there other hurdles to that nowadays?
Actually, our parking, and again, the discussion of parking, which has been a great learning experience for me coming to the village of New Paltz. Last night at one hearing where it was the Zoning Board of Appeals. Also, there's a parking plan initiative which was considered by the village board. At the same time, I'm discussing with the planning board as they expressed to me a concern over parking. Are our parking standards what they should be, and are they helping business or are they hurting? I do have a particular take on it, but I've been struck that parking remains somewhat a contentious issue in town. There are private parking lots where they essentially need to be policed to keep people from, regardless of signage, from utilizing spaces that they're where they're not permitted to park. They're private parking. There's discussions about still embracing off-street parking. I am not struggling, but I'm challenged by that. And one way or another, the community is going to need, New Paltz Village is going to need to make a decision as to whether we still want to attempt to cater to parking and shorter distances of walking. My understanding of New Paltz before I came to work and live here was that people enjoyed walking, from even if they were visitors, and they might walk a much greater distance from place of interest to place of interest than even where they parked from after wherever their last destination was. I still hear discussion about structured parking. I know from conducting a parking study for the village of Portchester and Westchester County that the cost is somewhat extraordinary, and put it this way, it's approximately maybe to create a parking structure with 300 parking spaces might be $4.5 million. That seems like
20,000 spot.
And it costs us about $5 to do one with a surface parking lot.
Yes, and I happen to think that, in my opinion, that we could identify places for additional surface parking lots, be they small, medium, or large, and with wayfinding. And I think most would admit that our wayfinding signage for things like everything from information to parking is not as accommodating as it could be to folks who may not.
That is a very nice way of putting that.
Okay, great. So we
It's
have consensus. And now that we can, of course, that
too
is.
many
Sign.
signs.
Oh, well, have you seen that we have an inventory now? We know every location and every type of sign. It's like a shelf in the DPW. We have a inventory of all the signs in the village.
Huh.
Yeah, so go through and start cutting. And
So I think that our parking issues could be largely solved in that way. It would also help. I mean, now that of course I live in the core of downtown, I see an awful lot of well-intended visitors finding their way and sort of stopping, wondering if they need to turn here or how to, where parking is. So I think we can solve it without structured parking. And then, but to continue answering that, especially the last part, the most significant part of your question, Mayor, is that 50% is low. However, that was in favor of imposing the requirement for pervious parking of one kind or another. So all of a sudden, with that no longer counted as impervious, what we have is, that brings me back, it's still the parking requirement. As your planner, I'm happy to push in a direction towards either less parking. I mean, I came up with
Let's push the cars out of the village.
Well, yes, I came up with 3/4 of a parking space for each one-bedroom apartment, and then it would be 1.5 for two. I ended up butting up against what a developer might even put by his own volition. In other words, in order to market a product, maybe even get financing, but more likely sell it. In other words, we're planning retail space at the ground floor and residential space of varying sizes up to 3 floors above, as I've amended this to 4 stories. So
what if we did this? Because I've been on a lot of committees over the years, and the one thing I hear more than anything else is we want New Paltz to be bicycle and pedestrian friendly, and there's whole committees and there's studies and everything. But when it comes down to budget time, we're spending the money on cars. So I mean, there's little things we could do outside of this. Maybe pay for public cleaning of sidewalks the way we plow.
I mean, we should have a designated fund for for every year we put money X number of dollars into the sidewalk.
Hear me out. There's one thing. What if we did just if the 2 reasons. Let's pretend for the minute that we all want to just completely mimic Main Street down to the brick. We're going to make it the whole exact same thing up 32, right? But we can't because of, at least for other lack of, even if everything else worked out, we can't because of stormwater and parking. Stormwater I just don't know enough about, but I'll try to find out a way to knock that off.
That's true or not. I think you can engineer stormwater management.
Right, but it's not something we can figure out right here tonight at this meeting. But the other one, what about this? If one of the only consistent things that our constituents have told us since long before any of us were on this board is we want more biking and pedestrian, then why do we have parking requirements at all?
Yeah.
Why not just take it out?
Actually,
and especially about something to and not like
Bike
we can provide
from Main Street entirely.
We provide on-street parking, we provide municipal lots, but we shouldn't force a developer to build parking lots on their private property if they think that they can make that rental or retail business work without them. Leave it up to the business owner. Leave it up to the person building the building. Because if you build something that the business would not be able to function without parking, you wouldn't be able to sell the building. No business owner in their right mind is going to buy it. So if you figure out a way to build it, then why are we going to force you to build? Basically, what this does is it forces you to build parking when you don't need it, Because if we don't require it at all, the people who do need it are going to build it on their own. Am I wrong? Am I
No,
missing something?
this is helpful.
Yeah.
What your comments are
Right.
extremely helpful because I
And
was
maybe
just-
have
I was
like
a
parallel
bit
parking on the
reticent.
street or something. I don't know. We can
Right,
put up
and
some,
actually-
like
well, here's-
obviously in the public
You're
interest.
absolutely right. Well, first things we can do is we know that
Oh,
Chestnut.
wait, I'm sorry. This
Yeah.
is. What about this? How about in exchange for not having to build parking, which costs at least $5,000 a space, you have to contribute. Here's what our parking requirement is for. You calculate based on the parking requirement and then charge them half that amount that goes into a dedicated fund for sidewalks and pedestrian improvements. So we basically have a kitty that comes in for things that make it easier to bike and walk, and fund it by saving people half the money they would have. We would have charged them to build parking.
Like the recreation fund.
Yeah, or like a separate, like the rec fund, a dedicated fund, or there's some communities that do like 1% of a project cost goes into a public art fund, or so there's examples of setting whatever funds we want, as a thing.
I
So
was already thinking about
yeah,
that.
obviously it's
You're helping me a
two and
good
two
deal
together.
because, again, I hate to admit reticence based upon my knowledge over a short time living and working in New Paltz, but I was a bit reticent about lessening the parking requirements, but I think this is extremely helpful to me and to our recodification effort because
We passed the chicken keeping law.
What
Be
was
out
that?
there.
Yeah.
just as the mayor said, you have parking could be on one or both sides of Chestnut and not exclude bicycles or pedestrians. In other words, perhaps enhanced sidewalks, bike lanes, and parallel parking. The street is awfully wide.
Really?
Well, okay.
Chestnut?
We're thinking of
It is.
yeah.
It's enough for almost
I
two
know,
extra lanes.
Maybe you're thinking
North of Town
doors
Hall.
open and bicyclists are in parallel when doors open.
North of Town Hall.
What,
Yeah, north
what-
from Town Hall to Agway. Think of that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that
I
section.
was gonna say not between
Well, no.
299
after- north of Tributary
and-
13.
No, but
Not the
once you get into the B, what is now the B3, that's
Okay,
actually
got it.
north of Broadhead.
I didn't realize we were still only talking about that district because we had gotten so far
Well, we
sidetracked.
may take some of this on to study
Yeah.
the adjacent districts on.
Well, and honestly,
Well, I mean,
between
if
the two of
you
you,
go into this code, you're calling for retail on the first floor. Now, let's say you've got, 10,000 square feet of retail on the first floor. You've got it divided up into 25 units. You're requiring 8 spots per unit. You're talking 175 parking spots for retail alone. Where are you going to fit more residential? How do you build the development out to maximize its scale at 50%?
you build it up.
It still won't meet the parking requirements.
And you'll never get, I'm just looking at something, B3 is an area that I think it should be. I agree with you, I agree with you, Jason. I think it would be nice to see it look more of a main street and, water mitigation in some of those, and you know where the wet areas are. Some of those are very, very wet and some aren't. I think some of them could be engineered.
That's where we put the parks.
What I'm concerned about though is you'll never see another, you're not going to invite in probably a lot of the businesses you would like to see, or how many of you use My Market? Everyone here has probably used My Market. I use it. Okay. You would never get, My Market you would never build another My Market if you said you can build it with no parking. You can't sustain the business without parking of those types. You'll never get someone to put in a barber shop.
No.
You'll never get someone-
No. There's a whole other point. It's not eliminating parking. The thing.
No, they have a right
It's
to.
private parking because there's we have municipal lots, and that's the public interest comes
And
in
that's the thing is
to.
we already have that
collectively
parking
do
lot
that.
I'm saying
right
private
there.
park, but yeah, you're saying you take it out of the B3. Where to Isabel? Where are you going to put the cars?
The parking ride.
But you're not going to take a parking ride to My Market, to another My Market, not the My Market, but to another one similar to that. Someone who's.
Tell you what, Jeff. Let's sit down with a map.
No, I know what a B3 is.
No, but without actually physically looking at it's too hard to picture where you would fit any particular building or anything.
Like Town Hall, I would love Town Hall to be B3 because I think then we could sell it. I think that would be
Listen,
great.
he's right, and I have to admit that from a developer standpoint, you have to provide a product that allows for parking. You need your retail stores to be able to have people come to them.
Sure.
And you need the residents to be able to get there.
Okay, but here's the question: is this? Kurt told me a few weeks ago that the village of New Paltz has, and correct me when I get the numbers wrong, was it 33% of the population of the village of New Paltz walk or bike to work?
30%, and it's an extraordinary number.
Island of Manhattan is 20%, and my friend who's a mayor of Ithaca was bragging about Ithaca being 16. So think about it this way. Here's a question: are we artificially inflating the number of cars in the village? I think we are, and because if we've got now 30% of us walking around, and I can rattle off a half a dozen people who have lived here for years and never bothered to get a license. Ariana, like I can point to 2 or 3 others. But it's people, whatever. It's all sorts of ages and all sorts of backgrounds, whatever. Now, is the question that, let me put it this way. It was explained to me years ago that the worst thing you can possibly do when you have traffic congestion is to build a bypass. Because what happens is you build a bypass and then you had just, he said, trying to deal with congestion by building more roads is like dealing with obesity by loosening your belt. The more you build, the more it'll fill up. So if we, basically what I'm thinking now is if we've already got 30% of us choosing to walk or bike to work, what if we actually listen to the broad community and instead of trying to both encourage pedestrians and encourage driving, which is what we do by subsidizing it, why don't we start to choke back on one and see what happens? I mean, I don't think businesses are going to go out of business. I think it's still well within the walking area. Is it right for the people who are the tourists who are coming to New Paltz of all places? And basically, it's ecotourism is the reason people come here. If we stretch their capacity to walk, then maybe they will just choose to do just that. Then maybe we're coddling too much. We're providing too much marketing.
And I know what you're saying. It's got. What we're looking to create is a walkable community.
Most Americans get in their car for trips of a quarter mile or less.
That's the first development. And you have to look at what the broad scheme of it's going to be.
Well, I think speaking as a business owner in the community, though, Jason, I hear where you're going, and it is already happening. And I'll use the example. The slippery slope that you're looking at is, and I will use where I'm located, the rents I pay for that location are higher than rents in other parts of the village of New Paltz. Many reasons, all economic driven. One is that there is parking on site. The other is the majority of our business is on the weekends. So out of 2 of the days we will do, every business down there does about 60% of their business in 2 days of the week. That's a fact. If you take the zip codes of the credit cards that are used in my business, and I will use my business as an example, over 65% of them are not residing in 12561. That's another fact. So I need those people to be able to park. Now, the big thing we suffer from, and Ulster County came down and they spoke at this at Mohawk consultations over Mohawk, I believe, sometime in 2012, and said New Paltz's problem is it's got self-limiting to its businesses because you don't have parking. And what happens is they don't turn, and it happens at Water Street Market. They come in the morning, they park, they shop Water Street Market, come down to Water Street Market around 2 or 3 in the afternoon on a nice day. We're all pretty quiet. There's people milling about, walking about. Our parking lots are all filled. We have created this great walking community because then I see them returning, walking down with a Starbucks. I see them walking back with a bag from the olive oil store, or I see them just walking back through. They all hop in their cars around 3, 4 o'clock, and then we all get busy again because those are the people then walking back. They've spent 4 or 5 hours in our community, which is exactly what I want, and then another load of cars can come in, take those spots, and they'll spend a couple hours. But we're limited. I can't turn those spots quick enough. So if you keep limiting spots, yes, they're gonna walk. They're already walking. Right. But we need to create the bigger areas because they won't walk.
And you actually, I think your point kind of dovetails with mine, and then I'm done talking, but because your spot is perfect in Water Street Market. There are what, 15 businesses maybe?
Yeah. On
one parcel. And now if we made every business have its own parking lot right outside its door, which is what this law would do, because this is based on the parcel, right? Your situation is exactly what we need more of, and it proves a point because obviously, parking needs are not individual to any one business. Parking needs are cooperative needs, which puts them in our realm, which means we have a responsibility to provide like cooperative parking and not force everyone else to necessarily do it, but we have to also pay attention to what our constituents need. So it's not a matter of eliminating it because there's people who need to get to work to drive. I mean, they need a car. Not everyone can, but we can kind of ease back on that and stop using taxpayer money to inflate the amount of driving, which I think is what we're doing now. But
we're
all. This is really far away. So
This is on all these points are I think appropriate for this discussion, and I might even suggest that I don't think it's insurmountable or cost prohibitive for us to create new surface parking lots in different places, including those which would serve what will be the new B3 district, the mixed use district. I think that's possible, and imagine this, even with allowing the density we're allowing and encouraging the housing, the mixed use, imagining collecting our recreation fee on each of those units. Of course, they don't have to be single family houses that we're collecting them on, they can be rental units, that's the way the state law works. You could take those funds and create a park, including a parking lot, and you might allow that parking lot not just to be for municipal park patrons, but also you might sign it and allow it. That's a way where those funds are coming from as sites are developed. They may have 100 units. That would be 100 times the amount of our per unit recreation fund. So there are ways of, I think, serving every need that we're talking about here, and having people understand that more and more when they come to New Paltz, there's going to be wayfinding signs. There are new surface lots opportunities, but they don't need to be, as you said, on site with each parcel.
And to be crazy, and I think this is my last comment though, but just be crazy, and maybe Park Point, I'll just use that as an example. Maybe they don't need the 480 spots there, because how many people here have friends in the city that live at on Broadway and 83rd, but they park their car at Amsterdam, or Amsterdam and 26, because that's where they can get a cheap spot. So maybe
it's habit.
I think you're onto something.
I mean, I think that's exactly where to go with
maybe
the
Park Point doesn't need 490 spots there. Maybe they need 490 spots, but maybe they need
within a radius,
and in a radius that maybe can help us. Maybe that parking lot shouldn't be built in. Maybe that parking lot can be built.
I have to take it in a totally different direction.
And I apologize.
Maybe what they could do is, instead of building us a parking lot, they could buy us a second loop bus and contribute more fuel to all of this. Don't say anything. And contribute more things like
buses.
that. We've had arguments about ghost buses.
I hate empty buses.
Ridership is up.
Yeah, we went from 1 to 2.
Well, how do you
But
get them full? You
regardless,
don't
I think if we're going to talk about like what we're trading for allowing people to develop and having something, and this actually, I was talking with Tim Rogers earlier, and he was saying that you were telling them this at the planning board meeting on Monday, that we should look at what our community wants and what our community needs, and then make that of demand, or say what Jason was just talking about, create a fund for sidewalks, or more like paths of desire or something.
Right. No, I like that.
Yeah, I like those a lot. They already exist. We just need to like them.
Well, let's.
I'm sorry. Do you know if I just jump in here?
Yeah, jump in.
That'd be great. But I think really when you look at the more European style of driving and parking too, they have the city centers. You park outside, and then you head into the center. And I think that kind of idea, and scattered lots throughout rather than the on-street parking. It just makes so much more sense. You want traffic to flow through, but we do want the bike lanes. I feel like the bike safety, pedestrian safety, having all these cars lining up and down our roads, when people are pulling into those spots and backing out of those spots, it's a large part of what causes the traffic backups.
Yeah.
And I think it causes visibility problems, and I think, I really would like to see bike lanes on all of our major arteries. And, as we connect to the rail trails, and as we have the rail trail that goes from here all the way out to Poughkeepsie, and then you can take that Poughkeepsie all the way down to Manhattan, or you take the train up, fly over, and then you're into New Paltz. I mean, I have friends who definitely do that bike ride. And then you can take that from here all the way to Kingston. So the idea of like ecotourism and the encouragement of like biking and increasing these rail trails and things like that. I mean, this all needs to be tied in, and I really do like the idea of squeezing people more off the streets. I find it to be an impediment, and when I think of New Paltz and the walkable, bikeable, Like that's really where I want to see the improvements.
Yeah,
think-
I mean, just getting back from Israel, I was in places like Sfat and Jerusalem where you cannot drive in these places. Some of the alleyways you can barely fit
Well, let's be
in.
fair,
Like,
those are 4,000-year-old cities, so let's
well,
be
yeah, but we weren't built for cars either. That's the thing, is that New Paltz was also not built for cars.
The only places you
And
wanna
when you
visit.
look at these kinds of places and the walkability, and like, I mean, I was going up and down these steps and I was thinking, how do old people live here? Like, you know, their knees, their hips, like, how does this work? But like, it works. People make it work. And there's all kinds of people living in all kinds of places. And I think that people would really adjust to these ideas much faster than they believe. The convenience factor is there. But like, a 20-minute walk in New York City is nothing. Like, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And here, even me from New York City, I think of my 20-minute walk here, like, oh god, I think that's 20 minutes.
Oh, I have to
Like,
walk all the way to Stop and Shop.
yeah,
but
but that's
after
not a
doing
long walk.
Exactly, and after doing it, I realized.
Tell us about doing it.
Wow, I was
I
talking
know.
about doing it. I walk from Grove, I take my shopping bags, and I head up to Stop and Shop, and I'm like, wow, I'm like, this really is a short walk, and visually, you're like, no, this is forever. It's a whole different part of town, but it's really like a few
You know,
blocks over.
I found out why that is actually, and it's even shorter than you think.
Which is a hill.
No. Human beings
It's a lot easier on the
subconsciously
way
will
back.
not walk a certain distance down an empty streetscape.
Yeah.
It's about 100 yards. And you know, and you can watch it happen. Go out on a weekend night, even or early evening walk, stand outside of Snugs or Hydrogeological, and watch the people walk from uptown down to like Hydrogeological and walk back up.
Stop.
They don't go across the street
Yep.
because they won't go past the parking lot. They don't go down to the outer Wall Street Market.
Mhm.
It's you have to make it's a psychological break. So, and like you're saying, like
We
from
just
here to the
need
movie
colored
theater
lights
is
all
less
over
of a
Main
walk
Street.
than I make. I mean, I'd walk farther
Because
than
they see
here to the
lights,
movie
you're like,
theater
oh, there's
to
more
get
down
somewhere.
there. Huh? Let's go check out the colored lights.
Yeah.
The-
You need an interesting something to
Like
pull
a
you
moth
on.
to a flame.
You've really-
People won't go down
I'm
to
not
the
kidding, really. I'm
No, I know.
joking, but I'm
And
not.
you've all emboldened me to think about this and reconsider the parking requirements for off-street. You'd think that I had an advanced understanding of smart growth principles, and you see that there, let's face it, there's some, sometimes it's got to be
hippies, Kurt.
converted.
Just get used to it. It's
Well,
gonna just it'll make
I mean,
life
I've been
easier.
What
Speak for
about
yourself.
the side
Stuart's in a
streets?
suit.
What about the side streets? Montague Drive,
What about
Ann Street, Juniper Street.
him? About what though?
Sidewalks.
What about what?
They're all in proximity, and I was beginning to ask her before we got off on, no
Mhm.
parking, was you had attempted to increase the distance between where you're able to park from the site to be able to walk to it. And it was 400 feet or up.
Well, it is 400 feet, but that's obviously not, that's antiquated. That's an easy call to call that. That's when people develop zoning thinking that people would drive because why walk ever?
Right.
And then that's why you have cities and urban villages like ours have had those standards formulated at one time.
Were you looking to increase that?
Yes, of course, yeah.
To what?
Yeah. Well, to approximately 1/4
Garden.
mile, at least as far as it applies to the conversation we've been having with the planning board, which is, they said, let's do
And that's a
something.
standard from what I understand. That's from what I've read. The studies show that people will generally walk, unless you practice, like by walking to the grocery store. Will generally just walk about a 1/4 mile before they'll get into a car.
Do you
It's just-
guys know if
it's a
there's any
barrier.
restrictions for parking, Montague, Ann Street,
Well,
Juniper
all of that we'd have to get into the details about that if the law changed. So
Yeah, actually,
We're not there yet.
If
I
they
think
allow for
that,
on-street parking, is that called on-street parking?
well, it would be on-street parking there, but to be honest, the types of things we've discussed here tonight, such as lots that would be available for people to walk a convenient distance to new development in the B3 district. I think that's really to study that. I think is the direction to go. I don't know if I'd want to impose the parking of cars on some of those suburban streets off of Chestnut, and I'm not sure that they're wide enough to accommodate maybe more than parking on one side, and even then you'd have to restrict it away from hydrants and driveways, of course. So that might be somewhat of an imposition that we're not looking to create for residents there.
And Rich, it wouldn't be no parking; it'd be no private parking. Well, the public parking would serve the needs of the businesses in that area. So rather than requiring every single parcel to have all the parking spots it would need, and this is something just
It's
talking.
also, a lot of those
about.
streets aren't even in the village, like Bonnecue is, but,
Yeah, Ann Street, the others are not.
And-
That's in the town, right?
yeah.
Willie.
Well, what about making it just less lenient on the parking restrictions and leaving it up to the developer to scale accordingly? Saying, you know what, I think it's too much to have 8 parking spaces per retail on site.
Yeah.
I think it should be 1
Like, I
parking
might
space
only
per
need 2. or-
2-bedroom
yeah.
unit.
That's what I was saying. Leave
Why
and
not
then if you
scale it
don't
down
want
so it works?
Right.
And you don't have to
Optional
have
parking.
all the parking.
optional parking.
But it allows, there's also a combination, like we were saying, you know, cars will come in during the day when people are out of work from the residential component, and commercial people can come in, and then things will sort of shut down around 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, people come home from work. There's only a couple of retail stores maybe still open, and there's accommodation for one side on the street, North Chestnut.
But imagine a gilded otter with no parking though.
Why
Would
not?
never be
Invite
built.
to service.
You would never be built. You could not sustain that you would never be able to have that many
Never
trucks.
say never, Jeff, without studying how many of those customers actually walk there rather than drive.
Well, except for that, go there on any Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night. They're parking on the grass.
And nobody in this room right now knows how many of those cars are from within a quarter mile, which is what the majority of Americans drive.
Oh, well, no, the
So,
majority of his business.
If you restrict it, well, that's what I'm saying. We don't know, and without knowing, why err on the side of
I do
paving
know,
everything we can?
The
So-
majority of his business is from out of 12561 on the weekends, on the busy weekends, absolutely, and that's you do need to park. And I agree with you completely, though, Jason. It's just that we then need to provide. Let's say the community needs to provide parking somewhere,
Well, I think they need better
and don't rely on
signage
buses to
already
move them around.
existing.
People will
I
not
just
get on
don't
a
know
bus.
where in the B3 corridor we could get a municipal lot other than where the state already funded Mike's,
No,
you know?
All right. Let's pause all that right now because it's almost 10 o'clock, and there's no way we're going to resolve anything about parking tonight. So let's just continue this conversation another time.
Parking plan.
Yeah,
So we can,
exactly.
we have things that we can discuss.
We have lots of venues, but the one last comment, Kurt, because I wanted to say this with the board. The last few pages, pages 5, 6, and 7, seem to me to be more appropriate to a general introduction to the zoning code because they would apply to every zone we might want to rezone. And if there's one thing that might be nice to have uniform across the village is fencing, lighting, street lighting, things like that.
Yeah.
So maybe this shouldn't be particular to B3 and should be in a separate section, you know?
Yes, actually.
That way we don't have to discuss different iterations of this every time we get a new zone as well.
That's true.
So is that, anyone think that, alright. Any other questions for Kurt, other than when we can, have a second draft?
Sure, actually, I'd like,
Well, we don't meet again for early December, so it's a skipped week, I think, that we got 3
We need
weeks.
November
Yeah, 28.
28th.
Oh, the 28th,
Through tonight.
okay, so never mind, I was totally wrong.
okay, so it's early,
So the 28th,
It's the
well,
second
whatever, so what
Wednesday in
meeting is,
December.
when can we have this, a second draft based on this
Okay.
conversation?
the version going to you first, before.
Well, this one came, so we can just bring it to the table,
Okay.
let's skip that
In
now.
that case, the Thursday before your first Wednesday meeting in December, which
Okay.
is.
So
What
first-
are we skipping?
Sweet, the end of this month or?
He doesn't have to send it to me to,
So
I can
there is a-
he can just send
There's a
the
meeting
draft directly to everyone, so he has until the
Okay.
deadline.
Yeah, to be fair.
Rather than have he and I
Give you some more time.
Yeah.
talk about it, make sure we have everything we need, so I'm just gonna let it go.
That,
Just Wednesday, not Thursday.
Sorry?
It's Wednesday, not Thursday.
What's
Deadline.
Wednesday?
It's the
What?
Wednesday before the first meeting in December, not Thursday.
oh, I'm sorry, the deadline is not Thursday? Okay.
No, it's Wednesday at noon.
Wednesday?
It's been Thursday the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most things don't come in anyway, so or most things are in before that Wednesday anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So your first
Thursday.
meeting, in advance of your first meeting, in December?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Well, anything else, Kurt, you have anything else on the agenda you wanted to be here for?
I don't think so.
I think that was the bulk of everything.
Yeah.
The only other thing I was talking about, or thinking about discussing was whether or not, if you look under the code written here on
What, on Kurt's revision here?
Yeah, under number 6, which is height requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Letter A, all uses, maximum 4-story, but no greater than 40 feet. Accommodatively, it should, if possible, be 45 feet because of the incidental mechanicals needed over first-story construction for retail. If there's going to be allowable uses such as restaurant or any other uses that would
Right, because you
require-
may need 12 to 14. If you got
At
3 stories
least,
on top, you're looking at some really
it's
low
being
ceiling
tight
rooms.
squeeze at 45, but if we do
Yeah.
living
Does that
flat
sound
roofs,
about
45 is quite reasonable. What I'm doing, of
just for
course,
duct
is
work and all is really all it is?
yes, you know what it is now. I'm expecting flat roofs because we're going to provide a wonderful opportunity for people to use the rooftops, and of course they can be living or green rooftops. So sure, it's a departure from the peaked roofs that give an awful lot of buildings architectural character. But there's going to be architectural character in green building as well. You already see it, and it's different. It's not traditional or historic, but the notion is that we don't need to accommodate various peaks in the roofs. We're looking at flat roofs where we're going to have amenities like communal or private porches, living roofs, things like that. So, but at 45 is probably better. I don't want to block anyone's view from the residences and parts of the village of the ridge, which, looking at the topography, we're up 180 feet above elevation at river's edge, and then it quickly jumps up to about 240 as you go about 200 feet up the hill. So I think we're going to be okay in protecting everyone's view, including the new residents.
Beautiful.
So 45 it is.
Well, thanks for your work, Kurt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the
Thanks,
discussion
guys.
of it.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for coming out, Rich.
yeah, trying to figure this crossing thing out one day.
Yeah, but let's talk when I'm tired, or you, me, and Kurt will sit down when next time you're around here. So.
All right.
All right.
Adios. Have
Thank
a great
you.
night.
Take care. You too.
Stay warm. God stays.
You too.
Let's see. We have. Well, actually, this might be easy. Is there any of the administrative business that anyone would object to me making an omnibus motion
Wait,
to?
what'd you say?
Would anyone object if I made a motion to just approve all the administrative business? Like, and have it noted in the minutes as individual motions to approve? I think it's all pretty straightforward, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Number 15 might you want some discussion on, just so everyone's clear
That
what
one,
that is.
yeah, that
yeah,
one.
I'm sorry. I
Other-
also
other
want
than
discussion
that
on
one.
11.
On 11? Alright, which one's 11 here?
Yeah, and 12.
For the Brine and Larios memos?
Yeah.
Those are closing out old projects.
Well, yeah, I didn't understand what they were.
Oh, okay, well, I can explain those three. Why don't I explain, and if you still have concerns, then we'll discuss them. But
Yeah, I mean, like, it just,
Yeah.
these things didn't say a lot about what these
Right.
This is all easy to do in one motion. Let's do the things that are going to be discussed in actual discussions while the cameras are still here. Because if this is all easy peasy, then we'll leave it for the end. No.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I was just clearing things off the agenda.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
All right, we've got. Well, I'll just skip that then for now. Let's see. We've got village records,
You saw
HR
the
report,
motion.
and the unfinished things from the town. This may be easy. I don't know. So I'll just put this feeler out there. That I'll see if anyone seconds it. I would actually like to move to deny all three of the town's requests on the grounds that we don't have the contract we asked for. There's not enough information to make a decision, and the conversation is inappropriate to have this late in the budget cycle. Though if they'd like to consider it, we should discuss it now for next year's budget. Is there anyone who thinks that's a good idea to second it? All right, hearing none.
I'll second it for discussion.
I mean, I don't. If no one else agrees, then it's kind of silly. But if someone else has a different way to resolve this, I don't. That's the only thing I'm really interested in doing.
I would like you to elaborate on that.
Oh, all right. Well, then it's seconded for discussion. I'll withdraw it if you need to. The point is these all came. These are things that came up at the joint meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, but that's part of why I want to.
Yeah.
Is because I had a brief.
Oh my God! Right. I'm sorry. You weren't there, were you?
No.
Yeah. I forgot about that. All right.
I was not.
I assumed everyone was there. I'm sorry.
Country.
What happened was, and Jeff, you can fill in if I make any mistakes, please. in the town's budget process, they found some these three things. I'm sorry, not three. That's so that's Kurt's as well. 6 and 7 were two things that at least some of the town council initially had found and thought to change the way they're funded to help out with their budget process and then what they feel is a fair way to do it. So, for example, the Memorial Pool is operating has a $60,000 loss,
Right.
and they're asking us to split that 50-50. At the meeting, Sally had made the point that because of the way the finances work, we only pay for like 27% of something. So we're basically 27% owners of this business that we're now being asked to make up half the debt for. So my proposal is really one of ignorance, which is, for all I know, these actually may be fine ideas, but what we'd asked for at the joint meeting was actual contract language. Like you want to change what we do with Memorial Pool, give us a draft pool contract IMA that lays out the responsibilities and the terms and conditions, so we actually have something to work off of. So I might be willing to do that, but not now and not this late, to lock us into something in our budget coming up when the town is just finishing their process and we don't have any language. I'm uncomfortable with how little we know and what the impacts are on our constituents. So, like I said, it could be a great idea. It's just let's talk about it for next year's town budget and not we have to do this right this second. And the town also didn't come to us 6 months ago when they should have appropriately and brought this forward.
Well, I mean, from my understanding, and maybe Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, that the town, this isn't, basically you've discussed this in a way that if we don't do this, the pool will still operate next year.
No.
It's an ultimatum.
Operate till the middle of the summer and close.
They're funding things for 6 months and then shutting it, and including the police was one suggestion by one councilman. So this it's an awkward process where we kind of got crammed into and we have to react in some way. So I'd like to react by not reacting at all and saying, let's do this slowly and right, or not at all.
At the end of that discussion, there was a very long discussion about this, which was heated at times. And at the end of that, then they said, well, we had this little group of 2 from the town and 2 from the village, and let's send it to them and have them solve it. And I said, well, great. All right, if we're going to do that, then we should have the proposal from the town. Mr. Barry and Mr. Logan are going to do that so that we can meet with them and see what this is. To date, I haven't gotten whatever that is, so we really don't have anything to meet about until we get that. But that's how it was left. We had this huge problem during the budget cycle. They're going to pass it in the middle of the summer. If we're not going to do it, then we close the pool. And so us four will now get together and create a miracle. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
If we don't do this, the pool would only operate until the budget.
Yeah, and just based on history, we would fund it as much as we can afford, which is fairly funding it. It's half used by village residents, half used by town residents. I'm just throwing those numbers out, correct or not correct, I don't know. But we'll fund it for.
Doesn't that matter?
Well, we're just using, and again, just going back in history, is that the town has always had a right of veto. The village has always had the right of veto on any expenditures there, and the town.
That's the first I've heard of that.
On the capital expenses, because the town was paying the rest,
but not the operational, which is what you have the debt from. You don't.
If you guys want to do the whole operational, that was Kitty Brown's offer too. Is if you guys want to take the whole pool and it's yours.
That's maybe a great idea, but it's not. I can't. I personally can't pull the trigger on that without knowing anything.
Well, we could take, and that was another an idea of Kitty, which was we'll fund the first part of the pool until your budget cycle kicks in June 1st, and then you can have the pool and do whatever you want with it. And you can run it, or not run it.
There was also a long discussion about whether, as a philosophical item, the pool should break even. The people who use it pay for it, so it's budget neutral in the long run, or that it's a public service that we provide to people. It should be in the budget, and that's not necessarily budget neutral. It's something that the municipality should do for the people and pay for it out of the tax base, the $60,000 loss spread over the town and the village. Is this it?
And again,
kind of how the discussion went on for a
and
long
we have
time.
that, and we have a good example of that in the community. We have the county pool, which actually runs a greater loss and actually has charges a little bit less. So we have reached the maximum amount that can be charged at market rate for the pool. It is the vacation spot for a tremendous amount of our community that cannot afford to go anywhere else, and this is one of the services that you provide as a community, along with, we run our, the village gave up all its recreation, so we run all the recreation through the town. Do you want us to run the football program at a loss, the baseball program at a loss? Do you want us to run the soccer at a loss, basketball at a loss, wrestling at a loss?
No, but it doesn't mean we want ultimatums and do what we tell you, or you're going to screw over your constituents. And that's exactly what the town board did.
But it's exactly what the village board did to the town a few years ago. Exactly.
Were any of us on the board when that happened? Your story you're about to tell?
Brian was on the board actually.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian's
Ariana might have been on the board. No,
she wasn't. It would be just me.
But what it was is the kiddie pool opened 4 weeks late because the village board refused to make a decision on it. It was presented months before opening, and when I say months, it was presented in the winter to purchase a liner.
Why was that again?
We couldn't hold the company would not hold the price on the liner when the season started, because now they can get a premium, and the town ended up paying 100% of it because the veto right, it was a capital expense. The veto right was with the village board, and the village board chose to veto it. So the town said, okay, fine, we'll spend it. Instead of spending $4,500 each, the town ended up spending almost $12,000. We ended up paying about a $2,000, almost a $3,000 penalty, because the village would not spend the money for a kiddie pool liner, and there was not a kiddie pool.
So is this revenge for something that happened 15 years ago?
Well,
no, it is not revenge at all.
Why wait,
can I just
see this as a personal attack? It's simply about the allocation. It's the allocation of spending. It's the allocation of shared expenses. That's all it is.
Can I just hop in there real quick? I mean,
of course you can.
Thank you. The village did offer to pay for that, but we were waiting on payables and procurement stuff from the supervisor, which we never got. And so I mean, this was the nonsense that was going on, and instead of coming together and trying to just
Didn't they win a lawsuit?
Yeah.
Getting like something 80,000 back from the town about mismanagement of the pool.
There was some money.
And the
that
village built
was
a bathhouse.
pulled back.
I mean, we can go back and forth, and it's just silly. Is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Well, and that's why we paid over.
But you have to. No, Jeff, hold on. Wait.
Well, if you want to say holding hostage,
Really?
we cut a check to you for $14,000 because you said you wouldn't make any other decisions with. So
who's you? Who are you talking about?
This board here, I delivered a check down here early in the spring because what was it?
Because you lost a lawsuit.
No, we didn't. It had nothing to do with the lawsuit.
Oh, all right.
No, that was this.
I know what you're talking about.
This little group that was assigned, that we had a few issues.
Oh,
we settled them, and as part of the settlement, if you will, they paid the check. We had our people work on it, and the project was accomplished, to my knowledge. So I mean, that was not from the past. That was just handled a year ago or whatever.
There's just too many different ways we can move forward. I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh, it's okay.
Please, go ahead. No, I talk too much. Please.
So I did come up with a brief idea, and I tossed around with the village. I don't know, but like the idea of maybe, and again, this isn't like us solving the problem, but maybe coming up with like a committee of people who are really interested in the pool, and who want to do a couple fundraisers, and then do like a night swim program or like concerts down by the pool for the summer. I mean, we have like a big area down there and all that, and I mean, we raised a ton of money doing the flood aid and things like that. Snow Bear can play, like a barbecue, and like there are people who are very committed and really do believe in the pool's service. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff we can do to raise money and like show community spirit towards the pool, as opposed to just like going between the two municipalities and taxing or whatever we have to do. If people really do believe in it, like the library, the amount of money that the library raised through people who really care for the library as a service for the community.
Library fair every year.
Like the library fair.
Or like the $325,000 that they get every year because they went and got a bond, or they got a piece put on. So don't forget, you can say it about the library, but there's $325,000 by law we have to give them every single year.
You are correct in that.
Yeah. And I'm more than happy with fundraisers. Absolutely, I'm on board.
I think like that could be. I think
no night swimming though, because there's no pool. there's no lights down there, that's a much
Okay,
bigger discussion, but.
There's no lights there anymore?
There's lights, but there's not lighting down there adequate for parking or swimming or, the regulations for lighting are probably far beyond. The county pool has lighting for night swimming, the Memorial pool is not set up for it.
It's
Be
an easy
romantic.
fix.
Right, but I mean, maybe like,
No, that's an expensive thing. Lighting is expensive.
but what I'm
I
saying
don't know the
is,
regulations either.
pool day events or generous donors or people, you know,
Absolutely.
a fundraising campaign of
And
some
we've had
sort.
generous donors. I mean, there's over $20,000, $25,000 was donated to build that playground. Sound about right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
20
20
$25,000.
to 30, something like
It
that.
was a lot. I mean, you're talking about serious
It was a
amount of
lot.
money. I agree. Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm on
and,
board.
and it's not obviously not something that can happen in just one summer because if we're going to operate as a
You read
deficit.
my mind. I was thinking about that.
Maybe we could even do it.
Adopt a park.
Sell elite parking spaces up top.
We could auction them off.
There you go.
There you go.
So before we start redesigning our entire pool program, the request from the supervisor and town board we have before us this evening is to
Right.
take over half their debt and just take it on sight unseen. For the rescue, to take on half of the Memorial Pool and half of the sight unseen with little to no data. And is that a decision anyone is interested or confident making?
Well, especially on the rescue squad, we don't really have information about that. At
We
least the
also-
Moratorium pool we've been discussing for a while, some of it.
Yeah.
But the rescue squad, I know the supervisor brought with her to the meeting some things which we never got before we started discussing it. So, I mean, I don't see how we can adopt that.
Why don't we just table it?
I know
the
it
contracts?
says the number of calls is split 46.7% to the village and 53.3% to the town. And I'm not saying those numbers are not right, but the numbers I was given this morning for last month were 89 calls to the town and 30 calls to the village. So I don't know if that's like, I mean, obviously that's only 1 month, not
Right.
a year's worth, and these are like really specific percentages.
Every year.
The 0.7, the 0.3.
If you take the last 15 years of the rescue squad,
So-
it runs 50-50 every year.
So is
The
it the
numbers haven't changed in
is
the
it
last
the
10 years.
idea that the Jeff and Given are going to
I guess.
make proposals with their contracts or discussion items or what, and the four of us will talk about them? Should there be something, another four of you,
Yeah.
2 and 2, talk about the rescue squad and then have some specific things to decide up or down, because we don't really know what we're talking about.
You know,
The
and-
rescue squad for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, well, also, I just realized they have 25 calls to the college, 20 calls to Woodland Pond, and both of those are in the village. So,
how do we want to?
so that's, well, yeah, exactly. That's like, are those not in the village anymore?
All of that should be laid out in the contract, which is why,
Right.
Like it is in the fire contract.
yeah, so we should basically, that's what I'm saying, I'd like to table these two things until we get a contract from the town,
And
a
then,
proposed revised contract. Kick it back to them, you want to have a serious conversation, then bring us some real legal things that we can sink our teeth into and we can talk.
Whether it's a contract or
We have an IMA.
discussion points.
Well, we have contracts over both, we have a rescue contract, I believe, and an IMA for the Moyle Pool, so we did change provisions for
Yeah,
both.
we started over a year ago with discussion of the IMA for the Memorial.
Yeah.
And we solved the immediate issue that we had to solve, so we could open last summer, but really haven't
And rescue
discussed
squad-
it any further than that.
And rescue squad, under Terry, something bizarre happened with rescue squad. They said it was
I don't
illegal.
really know.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
And that's unfortunate. We're still kind of working under that. It's something with Terry came
So,
up, but I agree.
anyone object to that, just tabling this so we get a proposed contract from the town?
I
Is
mean,
there idea
I'm
that-
not, okay, my only thing, and I'm not disagreeing with anything that you've said, because I do agree with this idea, is that I know they're voting on the budget, they've already had the public hearing on the budget, and this is not obviously our, I mean, we could say this isn't our problem, but in an effort to want to work together, do we want to be a little more amenable?
Well, we asked specifically for proposed contracts at the joint meeting,
Okay.
and we got a letter instead. And
Okay.
now it's the deadline, and they, it's kind of like, yeah, you're absolutely right, but I think that given the fact that, the town started the budget process in September, and they're coming to us like, a few weeks before the end of it, before their own deadline, it just
When
seems
was
like we
the
can't
joint
rush.
meeting that was canceled? Was
November
that September 16th?
What's that?
It was at August 16th,
That
the
was early in
joint
the
meeting
summer.
that was
That was
canceled
early
in
in the
summer.
Well, it,
I thought you
I can pull it up.
But no, it's okay.
it also
Um,
could be relevant that the towns had, you know,
Yeah,
obviously
we had that meeting.
some fiscal issues in trying to straighten out whatever
Right.
that was, and so maybe it wasn't until now that
Yeah.
They know
it's-
what
and
they're up
I mean,
against,
Susan
I
had
don't
nothing. So she wasn't gonna propose it anyway. Because otherwise she would have put it on the agenda and we would have had a reason to have a meeting.
So right now, as it stands, we're going to have to answer your final question. One, with the pool, I will not allow the pool to close regardless of the financing, no personally.
And we got time on that one, it doesn't open
And-
until
and-
the summer. so-
Yeah, and the reason being is multifold, but I believe the pool is one of the great services our community provides to our residents, absolutely. So I have no interest whatsoever in closing the pool or
I
doing
agree.
anything to change that.
Which is why I'm
And the
inclined
same with
to
the rescue
do-
squad, we're not looking at all to change, you know, there will not be an interruption of rescue squad service. I just, the question of the rescue squad just simply is based on somehow, the town is paying a larger share of it, you know, even if it's at, 48% in the village and 52% in the town, and it's on the A side of the budget, the village is only paying about 26% of that, so we're still left carrying the majority of the bill. That's the equity we're looking for. It's all about equity, and just because Jason mentioned it, and I imagine it's not going to be amusing, so everyone wants to come tomorrow night to the town meeting, it might be interesting. It had nothing to do with getting rid of the police force, it simply has to do with the, thank you for smiling, Jason.
Oh, no, it's,
Oh, he
the whole
knows.
thing is fine.
It's just simply about equity of expenses, that's all it is, all these discussions.
But you know that's not what the newspaper's gonna say.
It already.
They already did.
Already did.
Yeah, that already came out.
Thank you for smiling, Jason.
It was fun.
So, the basic, what I heard, this will be
I know,
tabled,
we're
and I
fine.
completely understand, and I will, report the same, tomorrow that it's being tabled for further information.
And
So-
at the joint meeting, I said that, well, since you weren't here, I chose to speak for you.
No, thank you.
That we'd be more than happy to meet with them if we had
Yeah,
something to
of
talk
course.
about. So, I mean, it's
You know
not.
how I love meetings.
It's not, especially early in the morning. It's not.
And speaking of that, I have.
It's not that we won't, do that. It's just that you got to have something to
Right.
start with.
Yeah, and speaking of that, if anyone wants to join, Kevin and I, we're meeting with Rescue Squad tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at the Rescue Squad.
Well, we're the pool committee. They'll
Yeah,
all have
yeah,
to
I
be
know.
the rescue.
I'll do
committee.
anything, I'm easy.
I would be happy that.
It's gonna be more information.
Right. Yeah. Tony. I mean, I work
Yeah, I would
tomorrow,
love
but
to do
like.
a meeting with DBA at 9:30.
Yeah, I could probably volunteer the other trustee who's not here because I know she.
Well, she wants to volunteer us for things.
Yeah.
That's what happens when they don't show up.
You don't show up,
I think
you
she should have
volunteer, right? So maybe she can, maybe her and I can help you with the rescue squad. We can set up a
Absolutely.
committee of 4 to
Perfect.
work on that.
And your DBA tomorrow morning?
I am, yeah.
First, we'll be there.
Oh, cool. Yes. Oh, yeah.
She's got you.
Because you and I, did she talk to you about hosting? Yeah, you
Yeah.
and I are doing this, so that's
Yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
going. Cool.
I'm sorry, we're sidebarring now.
Yeah, totally sidebarring.
All right, I withdraw my motion and table items 6 and 7. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Well, no,
Thank
I
you
still have one more question though,
Oh,
actually. So for us, in terms of us requesting this, is this gonna like really screw you? Is that tomorrow? Like you?
Absolutely not. I mean, it works,
Okay.
and my thought, just speaking as an individual and a member, what I would do is I would not remove the dollars from the budget. I would, if anyone wanted to or was interested, maybe move them to, not really a reserve fund, but maybe have them out of that line, but the dollars would be there. Because again, I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in not having a complete full season. In fact, we even opened it
Me neither.
early
That's
last
my
year.
first question.
If we get a heat wave again, I'd like to open it early again. We actually opened a little over a week early this year, and we get another heat because of the heat wave.
By the way,
Yeah.
were all the things that we had to work on to open it last year, they've all been accomplished, so everything's cool?
Yeah, I have not been down
At
there.
the
It's
pool?
incredible. Everything is beautiful at the pool. More rocks were moved in between Blue and Chris. What they worked out was incredible. It is beautiful down there now.
Good.
There's still more work to be done, but it does show that when you get two boards that work together and talk, and it's amazing what has happened down there. And it did not even it cost about 30% less than projected. So we all did very,
That's
very
awesome.
well.
I'm glad.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that, Jason.
Here.
Why?
I didn't even keep going. I know you want to. I'm gonna be.
No, it's fine. All right, let's do with the administrative and then the last two things. Ariana, you had 11, 12, and 15 as questions? Or Stuart has 15 as questions.
Yeah, let me
So let me just give you the 10-second version of those.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure that I just, when we're talking about like,
Well, no, it's fine. It's
$21,000 and
Right.
$208,000.
It's good to say it on camera anyway. We don't really talk about these projects a lot.
Well, exactly. I mean, New England Pipe Cleaning Division, I can put together what they're probably doing, but like, I would like some more specific.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like the downside of having Rich, Ruth, and like Bernier and are so trusted. Like it's kind of like no discussion, just whatever they say. But.
Yeah, I don't really.
Number 11, at least I can explain this very quickly. The pipe cleaning is under the 2003 consent order for sewer. One of the laundry list of things we have to do is actually. This is the cost to finish all of running a TV camera on a fiber optic cable through all of our sewer lines to see where the roots are, where the cracks are, and we've got that, and we're still going through it to analyze where the breaks are. So we were initially doing that in small bits, but the DEC basically told us we had to do it all at once. So this had to come out of, I believe it came out of the reserve fund initially, but it was approved.
Richard,
that,
is it part of the sewer?
it's part of the consent order, the sewer system.
No, I mean the reserve funds.
For the sewer system. I believe it was a reserve from the sewer.
Is that what they were saying? That's
Is
exactly
low.
what they were saying is low. So,
Yeah.
so is this part of why it's low?
It's low.
Or
in
is
part-
this going to deplete it further?
Well, it's already. This is budgeted for. We know this is coming, so we have. It's not going to put us at risk
Okay.
from that point of view. But it's low in part because the rates were. The rates are rarely raised, and I think because our sewer system is just more worn, it breaks more frequently. So we end up having to dip into the reserve more
Right,
often
got
than
it.
the water
Okay.
all comes down to.
But it's not because of the consent order.
No. I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
I
It's
mean,
just,
I figure this isn't part. I mean, this obviously isn't part of last year's budget, but we've been under the consent order.
Yeah, no, we kind of had to. John said, I believe it was the DEC says you can't take so long to do it, so we just did it all at once, which ended up being a good thing because now we have all the information as long as we can just plow through it quickly enough.
Okay.
Number 12 is the final payment or close to it for the 2 siphon chambers that we had installed on Huguenot Street over the summer.
Okay.
We just finished that recently,
We
so
got
this
a
is.
grant for.
Yeah, that was part of the DEC, or not the DEC, the 500,000 that Mark Lauer got us, either last year or the one before that. I
The
can't
original,
remember.
not the water tank money.
No, this was
It's before we were.
yeah, it must have been.
We were
what?
on
I
the
can't
board.
remember. Yeah, it probably was. It was probably before the 4 of us came on,
Okay.
because the next project
I mean,
was,
that would make sense because what he applied for with us first.
right, because
was
there's
the
a
water
year
tank.
lag, yeah.
Okay.
And number 15 is what happened was when we had to move the event from Main Street to the parking lot, we had this list of vendors no longer interested in participating, and so they asked for their money back because they had already bought a vendor's permit. So the account has more money than this in it still, but because of flukes in the law, the village board has to approve any.
That's what I was going to
Reimbursements
say.
to the-
I'm confused
to the
as to why
account.
we have to reimburse
I
them
was too.
and why we have to approve it. I mean,
I was too. I don't get the distinction.
who said
Nancy.
Okay.
It was okay if you needed to buy lumber
Just
or
because,
this,
because
but like
people
somehow
had
giving people.
approached me
Yeah.
about getting this done, and me and Sally were the ones who at one of our breakfasts said, well, this isn't our purview.
I didn't
we
think
don't
it was-
have to
I just-
approve this.
exactly.
This is just you put it through the way the regatta is funded every
That's
year.
what I thought
you
Deb had
just
already
put
done
this
it,
through the
you know.
same way
Right.
as like an invoice, basically.
Yeah, I don't
And
know
so-
why, and she can maybe explain it. It just
Okay.
didn't seem that important to learn the
She didn't
details.
say any. She didn't give.
I
you
just
any
can't remember.
specifics.
It wasn't a long conversation.
Just so you know, we got hit by the controller too. Anytime you make a payment out, even when you receive it from them, you do need that board approval.
Oh, okay.
It's just
yeah.
like everything needs to be audited, every expense. It was one of the things I remember one time.
It's you know what it is. We
Controllers.
implemented GASB 34 this year, so maybe or 45, whatever it is, the new one. Maybe this is a different requirement now that we've didn't have to do the regatta in the past or something. Were there any other questions about the administrative business?
Wait, before you go, before you move it all,
Yeah.
on the Mountain Waldorf School,
Uh-huh.
they're asking could they perhaps close the street on Saturday night for preparation. I just want to know if that's okay before you move it as a.
I mean, unless there's an objection, I don't think there's any residences there. It's the Innis Elting little angle behind the street, behind the Waldorf
That's
School.
not true.
Does that give us
There's like one house. Well, 2
Yeah,
houses.
there's
There's
totally
2 houses.
houses. Yeah,
Four.
is Kitty Brown on them?
Which street? Okay, are they closing both, or do they want to? It's just the one. I can't remember now.
They usually just close the one, just.
So you can leave the other one open.
If you can still
Yeah, that's a.
get through,
The
then I
top
have no
section of
problem with
Innis
it.
Avenue is what it.
Oh, if that's
requesting Innis
all.
Avenue be closed between our neighbors drive and the top of Elting Avenue. Given that our event begins at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, is it possible to close the street Saturday night for preparation? This request was granted last year and helped our well-attended event at very successful.
It's not a bad idea. You got St. Joe's right there
Is
too.
that an
You don't have to
expense
put
item
parking.
for us? Does that change our expense any more than if we did it the next morning?
No, it's still whatever the overtime, or hell, I'll just go myself and bring the barricades.
And in fact, you better do it because St. Joseph's has its craft fair this weekend too. So probably close.
Well, this is Sunday, December 9th. There's
Oh,
time.
I apologize. I thought it was this weekend. Oh,
Yeah, no, this is later.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't really matter because the time the barricades would be dropped off is Friday.
Right.
Oh, then yeah, we can. Then it probably costs. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're right. Right. So it doesn't matter one way or the other. All right. Well, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll move the whole
I'm
list.
just really trying to picture this in my brain.
Which one?
I'll second it.
Thanks.
Hold on, I'm mapping this. I want to see exactly.
It's a map of the United States.
Well, it is right now. So it's gonna be New Paltz shortly.
Oh, it's like Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Stuart.
Long Island is the big thing that sticks out there.
What?
Long Island is the big thing that sticks out.
Queens is.
Okay.
It's a fish.
Where is it? It is. Okay.
It's right by the pool hall.
I mean, I know where we're talking about. I just want to visualize exactly what's going to be closed. From their driveway to top of Elting. Okay, yeah, that's fine with me. Would anybody else like to see?
No. Not particularly. Okay, so I guess we can make a motion, or we can make a
We have a
motion.
motion in a second, now we're waiting for the fifth vote, I guess.
The
Fourth
motion
vote.
that I have is to approve all of the items under the administrative business.
It's been seconded.
9 through
We can
15.
vote.
Alright,
Is that 16 also?
Bills and claims. Is bills and claims included in that?
What's that?
Bills and claims are in the trustees room, I signed them all except for the one that
Yeah.
was confusing to me.
All right. Well, besides that, yeah, then that one. So yeah, if it's under administrative, unless there's an objection to one of those claims.
So 9 through
Just that
16.
one.
Yep.
But to be reflected in the minutes as individual items.
Yeah. Just
Making
to, so
sure.
we don't have to, rather than repeat the fracking thing and go through every one. All right. So the motion's made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now, Brian, you want to go next?
Sure.
The HR
Yeah.
report.
So the mayor sent an email out to all employees of the village discussing, I guess, your interpretation of
Yeah.
the HR report.
Responding to the questions I kept getting asked, is to be honest.
Okay.
Because
Well.
I'll let you talk.
No,
please.
I'm sorry. So, I mean, I wrote a letter in response, and I'd like to have it included in the minutes and distributed to all the employees tomorrow. I'll send you an electronic copy if that's okay, or you can have this copy as well.
Whatever would make you happy, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to read it. I would like to address the employees of the Village of New Paltz in response to the mayor's email regarding the findings of the HR Personnel Subcommittee. The facts stated by the mayor regarding this report were completely false. In his email, he notes that he has yet to view any videos of the meetings. However, based on the statements, I believe he has yet to read the minutes or clearly read the report. I would like to briefly set the record straight. The mayor stated that I personally recommended the elimination of the following positions: treasurer, deputy treasurer, bookkeeper, and director of planning. This statement is completely false. During the HR meetings, there were discussions of eliminating positions, but only through attrition and retirement. There were discussions regarding headcount reductions in both the clerk's and treasurer's departments. These recommendations were made by Councilmember Gallucci to Councilmember Barry, which he then brought to the committee. I was openly opposed to these recommendations. I noted several times that I did not believe Councilmember Gallucci possessed the knowledge of the current inner workings and time commitments of these departments to make these assumptions. I stated this at several meetings, and I also noted that during the discussions of the umbrella committee, I would bring up my objections to these assumptions. The mayor also stated that the New Paltz Times accurately reported that the HR committee recommends eliminating 13 positions, when in fact the committee recommended considering headcount reductions in the treasurer's, clerks, building and grounds, and building departments, and again, only through retirement, not just strictly elimination of positions. Meaning the committee recommended a discussion of headcount reductions and clearly stated that no one should be fired. The only position that the committee recommended removing immediately, which I was not only a vocal proponent for this recommendation, but was the one who suggested it, was the recommendation to remove the managerial duties from the supervisor and mayor and hire a village manager to fill that role. The committee overwhelmingly supported this idea and made it one of the recommendations. And these are all things you can see in the HR report. To summarize, the comments made by the mayor's email were not factual. They're also in direct opposition to my comments and feelings regarding the consideration of personnel. I would like to apologize if this caused any employees undue worry or stress. I'm not sure of the motives of this email, and I'm not going to speak to suspicions. However, I want to make it clear that I believe each of you, and that's all the employees of the village, and I suppose town as well, I mean, I can't speak as much, but plays an important role within our organization, and that whichever way we choose to move forward, after this study, we will head down that road together. Most sincerely, Brine Kimbers. And I added in, as always, please feel free to call or write me with any questions or concerns. And, you know, I just wanted to say that obviously, writing this letter, I was very upset by the email, and a lot of the concerns you had sent out after the joint town meeting, I actually agreed with, but because of the, whatever you want to call it, we had out in front of Village Hall after that meeting, you know,
argument is good enough.
That would be a good way of putting it. I felt like we could just save this for the umbrella committee, and I could, to be honest, I think the HR report was pretty clear that there, I mean, it's the second or third recommendation that no one would be fired, and the second recommendation is consideration of elimination of positions, and it was very clear that it was only through retirement, and you know, Kurt's position was never mentioned, Nancy's position was never mentioned, Roseanne's position was never mentioned specifically, and in the email it specifically stated that I had recommended eliminating each of these people, which I never had, and if anyone watches the videos or reads the minutes, they will find that I didn't state that. So, I mean, that's really all I have to say about it. If there's something that you want to add.
Oh, absolutely. Don't worry about that.
Please.
Well, I appreciate you responding finally to concerns about people losing their jobs. Because yes, it is finally, Ariana, because when you were here, which is not, sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, but when you were not, at the meeting you missed, how's that? It was after that we got the HR committee report that's being mentioned, and that night I read it and sent out an email with a whole list of questions, and you got it. I think the whole village and town boards got it.
I read
Yeah, and the whole, I sent it to whoever I got the thing from. So it was, and I know you and Kevin were on as the co-chairs or whatever, the conveners, whatever. And there were really specific questions, and I waited 1 week because I knew that as soon as that report got out, then people are going to be scared about their jobs and not know because, well, look, and what you imply is, I'm not gonna, you know, you can call me a liar all you like on TV, and you seem to enjoy it a lot, but you know, look, I'll read you from your own report, and this is really what got people scared. Section D, based upon input from department heads, which didn't exist because I know that neither you nor any other member of the committee spoke to any department heads in the village about what their job duties are. Based upon absent and fictitious input from department heads, council persons and others, the committee has been advised, and well, this is, sorry, there's a grammatical error in the report, so, and others, oh, there's a missing comma, and others, comma, the committee has been advised that as many as 13 full-time positions can, not may or might, can be eliminated, with many of these positions coming from buildings and grounds. Many, which is why I believe Councilman Berry had pointed out 8 town, equivalent DPW, whatever, from water, sewer, wherever they're coming from. There's again, the subcommittee believes These reductions could save the consolidated government between $800,000 and $1 million annually. Nowhere in the report is there an explanation of whose jobs are on the chopping block, which means every employee in the town of Village are terrified about losing their job imminently, in a way that they even more so than they were when consolidation started, because this whole process is scaring the hell out of the people who work for the village and town. Their livelihoods, their careers, or whatever, are on the chopping block. And I even warned you, and specifically in the committee in the beginning, the HR conversation has got to be like as most protective of these people as possible.
Right.
And like I said, and the thing is I was very, very clear in the email. I have not seen the video of September 25th of HR meeting, which is what I was told by more than one person who watched it at home and told me that you specifically had said that we could lose 3 from the village finance department, and Kevin had said so and so, and that's where it came from.
Right.
But here's the thing: is the email that I sent. No. Let me finish.
Okay,
let me finish. Because I sat patiently through yours. No, please, Ariana. No, you can't. Let me finish.
Let him finish, and then we can go back.
Yeah, you can do whatever you got to do afterwards.
Right.
And we'll see if I stay around for it, to be honest. Because I don't appreciate any of this. Because the reason I had to send that email out, that you wrote this letter to the employees in response to, was because of yours and Kevin's and the entire HR committee's failure to respond to any of the legitimate concerns. Now, when I, who am managing and supervising the staff on a day-to-day basis, have to hear everywhere I go in the village, am I being fired? Am I going to lose my job? Where did this come from? That email I wrote was not in response to your report. It was in response to your silence about the incompetence of the report and the lack of information. And it was in response to the silence that has terrified our staff. And someone had to say something, because you were not even directly asked. Kevin did not, even though he was directly asked. Who's left? Just me. I'm the one talking to all the employees in the village. I wasn't in those meetings, and I gave you the chance. I asked you to respond, and you chose not to.
Okay.
Not my fault that you don't respond.
So that's a good point, except that if you scroll down to the recommendations, it does say consider. It does say through attrition. So somehow you missed that. There's no point.
I'm talking about the fear.
Where you said the only thing that caused fear is you sending out an email saying that all of you can be fired, when that's not what the report says. You specifically said that I was going to fire that I recommended firing the planner, the treasurer, and the deputy treasurer. I never did that. And if you would have watched the meetings, you'd see that I actually agreed with you on a lot of the things that you stated. But I'm not going to, when you tell me after a meeting that you're going to bury me, I'm not going to respond to your emails.
I mean, an argument.
I don't know what it means, but I'm not going to respond to your emails. And then you talk about fear. The positive managerial thing to say would be like, look, these are all discussions. Don't worry. Keep working hard. You guys are great. Not, Brian Kimbers is going to fire you. Send him an email. That is not going to make anyone feel better. It's going to make people feel worse and fearful. You can do it. And you know what? I spoke with several of the department heads today. And they were like, number 1, shocked. Number 2, didn't believe it. And number 3, look at the videos and were like, Brian, I can't believe that this was even said. So,
don't worry, I'll fact check what you're saying.
I certainly hope so.
If I'm wrong, I'll look on camera and monitor our next meeting.
I don't even, I mean, if you want to do that, feel free. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this all will be brought up at the consolidation committee and the final umbrella committee, and I will express all my concerns that I've been expressing throughout the entire thing. But I just think it was inappropriate for you to say those things that I specifically said when you didn't even know if I said them. So and that's the reason that I'm sending this letter out to everyone. And I was just gonna respond via email, but I want it to be I want people to know. Forget the cameras. I want all the members of our village to know. I want it to be in the minutes. I want it to be on record, because it's very, very hurtful and slanderous, and I don't think it helped anyone in the village. I think it only made them more fearful.
Well, I got thanked by everybody, so.
Did you? That's interesting that you were thanked. I would, whatever. So. Okay.
But I'll look at the videos, I'll watch all of them, because I've never gotten any HR committee minutes.
Okay.
I've never seen any document. The only thing about the HR committee I know is your one report.
Right.
All these only documents I've ever been given.
All the meetings are online.
Yeah, I don't watch every meeting online. Neither do you, or well, maybe Ariana, but other than
that. Right, but I don't watch all the meetings, but I wouldn't quote someone regarding.
And that's the thing is that I know and have worked with all these people for a long time. And the people watching at home are often strangers. So when I sent an email to the staff, and it wasn't to all of us, the staff I knew, it was in response to two things. I didn't plot this. I have nothing against you. I'm not going out of my way to do anything to you. It's not who I am. My email is in response to two things. One is the fact that every other employee that I spoke to was asking me, because they're
What's
afraid.
going on? Right, the new
And
Paltz
that's
times
why-
reported it incorrectly.
Right, and that
does not help it.
Because because that HR email got sent around, forwarded around before the New Paltz Times article, and everyone read it because it's their jobs at stake, and so I want and that's why I honestly was shocked when I didn't get a response from anybody.
Right.
Because my questions were pretty common sense.
I think
Where's your math coming from? It's not so off the wall, and I sent that out immediately the same night as soon as I read the report.
Right.
Because I knew the next day I'm going to start to have these conversations. I needed to know what the report said factually,
Right.
so I could calm down anyone who read it or heard a rumor or did this.
Right.
And at every step of the way, it's been gas on the fire, gas on the fire.
Right, but the report says that no one would be fired. The report says specifically no one would be fired. It says discussion
The fact that people are
of
being
reduction of
recommended.
positions through attrition. I mean, that clearly states that that's not the case. And
These are
you
smart
said
people,
exactly
Brian.
the opposite.
But these people are smart people. They
I
understand
believe
that,
they're smart people,
they understand that one subcommittee of a larger project that's going before the voters is not the end all be all. They know that. And that's not what scares them, is the finality of a particular period or a comma or a can versus a may. What scares them is that there's a conversation going on about I may not have a job and no one's even talked to me about what I do.
Well,
And you're
right. And I had asked for reports from all the department heads, and that was put past. And that's another reason why I was very upset about this. And if we didn't have the type of things between us,
If you send me the copy of the email where you requested it,
This was a verbal request. I didn't send it via email, but you'll see it all in the videos when you watch them. The point being is, even if the things that were said specifically about me that I requested were not true.
You're one of the co-chairs of the committee, which is why I gave you the email. You and Kevin are the ones who.
But you said in the email.
I know what I said in the email.
Brian Kimbis says that these people are going to be fired. He recommended firing for
I said,
our head employees.
Though I haven't seen the video, from what I understand, Brian said this. That's called a caveat. It means a statement is conditional.
My math is wrong. Kevin Barry suggested 8 jobs to be eliminated from the town. Brian Kimbis recommended 4 in the village. The result is 12, not 13. I don't know what the last position is they recommended to be eliminated. It may be in the report. I just can't remember.
It's called a correction, Brian. That was not the email that you were referring to. And yes, I was using shorthand because that's what people do when they write.
Shorthand of saying that I recommended people were fired.
It says actually here, while I have yet to watch the video on the website to double check, from what I understand, it was at the September 19th meeting where Councilman Barry proposed eliminating 8 from the town buildings and grounds department, and Trustee Kimbis said that the village could eliminate our treasurer, deputy treasurer, bookkeeper, and director of planning. 13.
And that statement is entirely true.
No, it's completely false. And in several meetings.
I mean, it says in here, I have yet to watch the video, so I don't think anybody here.
Well, why would you say that?
None of us were present.
And you sent it out to all the employees.
Okay, I have to say, I came back and I saw this, and the first thing I thought of was fear mongering, and the idea that you are anti-consolidation and you are getting everybody to be anti-consolidation and drive wedges between our board members and our village employees. And I don't think that this was, you said you're not plotting against him, you don't have intention. I don't think it was plotted or that it was this grand scheme. I think this was written in anger. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it was a kind of heated email, which means that things are sometimes said that maybe normally wouldn't be said. Or maybe would be thought twice about being said. But your original questions, I do think, have validity. Just because they weren't answered doesn't mean that fear-mongering should begin.
Well, then I'd appreciate if you'd stop accusing me of fear-mongering and various other things. Look, if you guys want to have an actual conversation about policy, I'm all for it. You want to just, you know,
I mean, I just
accuse
think
me of
this is
things about an
inappropriate.
email that was written, and this is just not appropriate. None of this conversation is appropriate.
No,
I'm sorry.
What's not appropriate is
It's
email.
an
If you
email.
want to have a conversation about policy,
The email's not
we can have a
appropriate.
conversation about policy, and I think that's what the umbrella committee is for. And if you want to talk to me about it, I'm fine with doing that. And then if we would have spoke about this before you sent out the email, I would have said no. Like Jason,
Then
you're right, and
reply. That's all.
What?
I wouldn't have had to if you would reply. If
Pick
you
up
had,
the phone before you send out an email like
well,
that.
I'm sorry, waiting a week. No, I'm sorry. Some people have to do their jobs. If you send out, and it wasn't just him. Kevin buried it. I'm not
Okay,
targeting
come on.
you.
There
The whole
are
committee.
there
Come on.
are
Are you kidding
things
me?
that we wait to hear from you for a week on. Let's be serious. We all sometimes there's things that are waited on longer
Mm-hmm.
than others. And if it's emergent, if it's immediate to you, the respectful thing to do would be to pick up the phone and call Brine about it, or to watch the video before you send.
or to
it.
bring up the committee report at the next meeting. And in the meantime, say, guys, look, I know there's gonna be some stuff going around. Just ignore it for the meantime. I'm getting to the bottom of it. We're gonna have a discussion at the next meeting. I'm gonna see what Trustee Kimbis has to say about it, and then we'll figure it out. And just please don't worry. I know this is a tough time. The Human Resources Committee is tasked with reviewing personnel. I mean, it is not a pleasant or enjoyable job in any way, shape, or form, but it's about efficiency. And I tried my best to, I mean, I feel like everyone here is essential, and everyone here is doing their job to the best of their ability. And I stated that just all throughout this thing, all throughout it. And then to have this happen, it's just, it's the opposite of productive. You're right.
Look, a
This
final
is-
report, the meaning and purpose of a final report to anything is that you shouldn't have to look back and watch every video and read all the minutes to understand what its point is. That's why it's a report.
But-
it tells you the information that
Yes,
was
but the things
accumulated.
that you said are what the recommendations are. Like the paragraph. I mean, and that's what I was going to say before we got into the morality or ethics of the email itself. Was just that the actual recommendations don't have the number 13 in them, and the second thing is about coinciding with retirement. So when you scroll down to number 3 and it's the recommendations, it is different. It doesn't say.
It says 13 on part 2B, or D.
That's probably.
That's
probably.
That's not the recommendation.
That's not the
Has-
recommendations, though. That's
So why?
Recommendations
All right. So
is
why
the
is your
end of
narrative
page 9.
recommendations different then?
because there was probably a typo. That is possible.
All right,
But-
very possible.
No, it doesn't. No, that totally makes sense. The narrative is all the research that's been done, all the things that have been come to conclusions, but not necessarily the
That's a
recommendation.
good point as well.
Because,
Look, I'm sorry.
because it is the HR committee, and because it is a sensitive issue, and because we are looking at it this in so many ways. And I have to say, I keep thinking about and this is going off in a different direction that we will talk about further, but the idea of a municipal waste collection service, if we have municipal waste hauling, that would create jobs. And there's all these people that would not have to go anywhere, would just be moved. And I think if we really looked into that, we would see a cost, not just a cost saving, but we could turn it into a revenue stream. And that would be based on what the village and town signed up for with the EPA, where we're trying to move towards zero waste. So I think that all of this really could be moot if we just look at the ways where we can keep employees instead of looking at but that's not what your committee was tasked with. Your committee wasn't tasked with, let's come up with a way to keep all of our employees. So I think really when this is looked at and we're actually developing, if we consolidate and we're actually developing this new government, we are not going to have to worry about firing people. And we should try to encourage our employees to believe that. We believe that.
I'm sorry. My job is safe because of faith.
Because
In the face of,
we're all saying we want to work on something completely other.
Look, this whole conversation is inappropriate,
And because
not the
it
right
says
time.
that
And
if she
again,
comes out
Brian,
with
again, I'm sorry to cut you off. Please go ahead, finish.
I'm done.
So am I, except for one thing, because again, Brian, you're wrong. You're wrong.
You're not
This-
saying if that last word.
And if
Where?
that's what I choose, then
Where,
that's also.
where am I?
Because it's not the firings or the headcount reductions or the layoffs or retirement or whatever we want to, depending on the model, don't say they're based on retirement. They say employee headcount reduction should coincide with retirement to the extent possible. Now, if we consolidate and none of the positions of these 12 or 13 are close to retirement age possible, so this report says they should be fired. Your own report is contradictory.
It does not say fired anywhere in there.
If you eliminate a position,
it says consideration of elimination of positions, and it says should coincide with retirement. It does not say we found 13 positions, get rid of them. Right or wrong? Where does it say that? Where did I say eliminate the planner, treasurer, deputy? It is about that because you said that to all of our employees. That is wrong.
And the only reason I'm not defending myself is that I said exactly what I meant, which is I haven't seen the video, which means the rumor that I've heard says this. I will watch the video. And again, what I say, I will apologize on TV. But if you want to just sit there and attack and not take any personal responsibility for your role in terrifying our employees and in misinforming and in not having accurate information presented to the public, then there's no point in having this conversation. Because it's just attack and then, people weigh in to defend a couple things. And we'll find out where we agree, and I believe you when you say that you and I are on the same page on a lot of the HR stuff in the committee. And now, obviously, I'm going to watch all the goddamn videos because I can't get an answer from your committee about where your information came from. And because no one else is apparently watching out for our employees, then someone has to check the facts. And apparently no one else is, so I'm going to have to do it.
Except I was, and you said I wasn't. But you don't know that.
Why would
you
I?
didn't look, so you just sent out an email saying that I wasn't.
I asked.
That's the difference.
I asked, and you just...
That's the
it was
difference.
just silence.
What did you say in the email? Brian, did you recommend eliminating the treasurer, deputy treasurer, planner? Did you say that to me? No, you didn't. Did you directly ask me anything? No. You sent out a broad range of concerns, which I shared some of those concerns. I did not expect the next thing for you to do to be send out an email like that. I did not. I'm sorry.
Well,
we can stop discussing it now. I've said my piece.
And I'm always, when I start to hear rumors that are scaring the people who
You'll write an email and say that the rumors are facts and that you're sure.
That's not what I said, and you know that.
That's exactly what your email said.
I'm not going to read the goddamn quote again if you want, but it's pointless. So, anyway. So that was fun. Stuart, you had the last agenda item. Village record, which I think is more you and Katie.
Okay.
Man, you make work environment toxic.
Oh. You need to be here for this discussion.
I'm here. I'm right here.
I make it toxic.
Okay.
And Stuart, just so you know, this didn't go on the agenda because it was after the deadline. I had absolutely there's nothing to know what it was.
Okay,
So,
I accept that criticism. But so I guess it'll have to be in the form of an emergency item, and this is the reason why. There's probably a long-range conversation we should have about village records and things pertaining to it, but something that should be dealt with immediately has to do with the minutes. There's the state law that says what we should do with the minutes, plus we passed something even more stringent in our rules saying that when we have a meeting within 5 business days, we're going to have the minutes out. And about a month ago, we discussed that, and it was going to be a priority to catch up and take care of that. That hasn't happened, and
I know.
And I'm concerned about it, and I'm not there to argue or start fights or anything else. But it's our responsibility that we have these minutes. We have things pending where we should have the minutes in front of us. We should be reminded of what our positions are and different things to be able to refer to them. So I don't know how to solve it, but I think we should solve it immediately. There should be a plan. Maybe by our next meeting, 2 weeks from today, this could all be moot and we could have all these minutes to look at. But I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And I don't,
everyone, including all the staff. The department has relied on them as much as we do.
Yeah, and I
I'm sure.
And I just think we got to deal with it.
Katie, you want to answer that?
I do, and I am sorry to have disappointed the board in any way. As you know, tonight is the first night that I have the laptop, and if anyone wanted to peruse, I have 9 pages of notes from this evening's meeting. And certainly the town, I am increasing the efforts, and you certainly will have everything done by the meeting of the 28th. And the meeting for the joint town and village meeting was out within 2 days and was 15 pages long.
I saw that.
So there, if yes, they are extremely slow in coming, and hopefully after this evening that won't happen again, and I am diligently trying to catch up with them so that this doesn't happen again, but they are extremely thorough minutes when they are completed, and I know that they need to be completed to keep everyone on track.
A couple of comments on there. First of all, I'm not doing this to hassle you or
Absolutely,
anyone
I
else,
understand,
but
sir.
we have a legal responsibility that we have to live up to, and I think we ought to get at it. Second thing is, while the minutes, the more detailed they are, the more helpful they might be to us. They don't have to be that detailed. In fact, if you look in the reports of NICOM and so forth about minutes, there's really only a handful of things that have to be in there. And so maybe in the draft minutes, those could be done. Who was there, who voted, what was the action taken, and then we can fill them in later or something. But I think the timing of them is critical, and I know that when I've been, most of the time when I've been given minutes, I get back with my comments whether people want them or not, because I think it's important and it's our permanent record, and for a lot of reasons we need to have that permanent record. And so I just think soon we should solve it, and I don't know how we should do that, but there can't be many things that are more high priority than that. Not things that should take months to do. We should get at it somehow and have it resolved.
If the board, if it so pleases the board, I can have motion and action minutes to you by Monday morning, which will have nothing but the motion and action taken by the board. No narrative, no. I certainly won't erase anything that's already written, but I will happily provide that by Monday morning for the board.
Well, I'm sure that the mayor has ideas about how he would like the minutes and then get the comments, but I don't know what the long range solution is, but we should have an intelligent, quick solution of it. And just because we're putting ourselves at risk and in jeopardy by not doing that, and our constituents expect us to do that.
Absolutely.
So,
I will have motion if it's
and
so
I don't enjoy saying this.
I understand, Stuart. If it so pleases the board, I'll have motion action minutes completely up to date for you by Monday morning. And with the exception of this evening's minutes, which will, as I said, I'll be sorting through the 9 pages that I have been typing as we've been going along. And we'll have that within the next few days. I'm hoping that the addition of the computer will make this a faster, tidier process. Certainly before I sat down to the meeting this evening, I had the draft of the minutes setting up the agenda and the basic information before actually anybody else was in the building today. I might note that it might have been appreciated if this could have gone into it follows into the category of things for executive session, and it might have been more well responded to had we gone into executive session. I had been invited because it borderlines on some of the characteristics of why we go into executive session, but I'm certainly a big girl and can put on my big girl britches to deal with the situation.
Well, we could debate that, but it's not my intent to embarrass you or anything. I just want to solve it, and if this wasn't brought up a month ago, then I would have done something different, but we just have to solve it, and I don't want to be the bad guy, but I will be if I have to be. I'm sorry.
You're not the bad guy, and certainly, as I said, motion and action minutes will be to each of the board members by Monday morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Oh, great. Is that the last thing?
Do we have executive session?
No, that was just kind of boilerplate stuff on there. We have 2 people interested in the planning board, but there was no one who could come tonight. That's it, so I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.